Testing, 1, 2, 3. Let me know if you guys can hear me. I guess you can. Um, okay, thank you. I can. Okay, y'all can hear me on YouTube. Okay, great. Thanks, Joyce. Hello, Mel. I started not to even set this up, but this is really the judge's space because I was actually busy doing something. Who is who's this? Piano, how you pronounce your name? There was a blah blah blah. Hopefully I don't have any connection issues tonight. But I think we're gonna have a good discussion. So the question is Elon Musk doing too much? To me, he's starting to do too much. And he needs to leave South Africa alone. Um, and let me add you as co-host. All right, I just sent you the link for. Oh, you got it. Can you hear me? You're muted.
I hear you.
Okay. All right. So this is I just put this space together because I was actually watching one of my favorite podcasts, but then you had called me, Judge, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess you're. I thought you would have still been out. So I put in it's open mic, so we all know open mic Tuesdays, Judge Joe Brown X Space, open mic. You could ask anything, talk about anything, anything that's going on in the news, entertainment, it doesn't matter. So it's open mic is whatever. And I do also like to put a title as well. So today I put, is Elon Musk doing too much? And leave South Africa alone. I think he's been doing too much on his own X space as far as trying to call out Julius Malema. I hope I said his name right, Malema. And he's no longer a resident there. Um, he was at the Oval Office today. I like what he's doing with Doge and uncovering some of the corruption. He did have to walk back about the $50 million in condoms, but as far as exposing mismanagement of money, I do appreciate that. But I'm starting hearing him talk is starting to irritate me. Um, when he was in the White House, he had his son, and I'm just like, why do you bring your kid to work? It's not bring your kid to work day. He's starting to annoy me with little stuff, and I think it's because he knows he has the ear to the president, sitting next to one of the most powerful men in the world. Yes, I appreciate what he's doing with X, Starlink. He's a creator, right? But that doesn't make him a genius, or that doesn't make him a know-it-all or righteous. And the conversations and the tweets that he was putting out there about South Africa and about the land and killing the white people, I'm not South African, I'm not from there, but considering the history, I do have a problem with that. And he was not correct, because they're not killing white people, they're not taking their land, but what they are trying to do is disperse land equally so that everyone in South Africa can benefit and gain some type of social economic uplift or what have you. So if you guys want to talk about Elon Musk, if you want to talk about South Africa or anything else, please request to come up and do so. Hi, Judge. I can't hear you, Judge. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me on X? Okay.
You're cutting in and out.
I am.
On my end, you are.
All right. But y'all could I can't hear the judge. Can you guys hear him?
No.
All right, so I don't know what's going on.
I think he's going to have to log off and log back on.
Yeah. I don't if you could hear us, Judge. Go out and come back in because we can't hear you. And I can't even see if you are on mute or not. It looks like you're not on mute, so but we can't hear you. What is this? Hello? Hmm. What is this? All right. Okay, now you're requesting to come back up. All right, here we go. All right, can you hear us?
I hear you.
All right. I just sent your co-host request.
Yeah, I could hear you guys the whole time, but apparently you couldn't hear me. I guess that's somebody's watching. Anyway, my position is I'm glad Musk is doing it. It's free speech, equal land distribution sounds like a commie plot to me. That's what they do. So yeah, there's a danger of that going on down in South Africa, and we do have this thing called BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa coming up with a plan to counter the U.S. hegemony in the economic sphere. So if South Africa can become our rivals, offset us economically on the world scene, then they can pay for their own stuff and all of the rest of the stuff. I don't necessarily agree with Musk, but that's his opinion, so I welcome him to talk all he wants. And as far as bringing the child to the White House, there was a woman I dated for a while who had prominently displayed in her home an old 11 by 14 black and white photo of her being, well, she was a child handshaking with President Ike Eisenhower in the Oval Office. Her daddy was a big time black politician in Memphis, so he took her to meet the president. So that's happened. I have people I know who have pictures of themselves as children under 10 years old, 7, 8 years old, in the White House, shaking hands with President Carter. There is somebody I know with Ronald Reagan, and there's a couple of somebodies that took pictures when they were in elementary school with Lyndon Baines Johnson. So it's a tradition. And, I know it's rare. They used to have take your daughter to work week. Well, not used to, they still have it. It's been going on for 50 some years, 55 years. They've never had a take your son to work week. So I guess Musk took his son to work, which I like. So I approve. I hate to disagree with you on that. But anyway, I'll stay over in the shadows while anybody wants to discuss that.
Well, it's not wrong with taking your kid to work, but um, you need to teach your kid to be quiet when they need to be quiet. Yes, he is a kid, but it was annoying. I don't and then too, I don't know. He was just honestly what it looked like to me, to be honest, he wanted the spotlight on him because then on X and other news outlets, it was like, oh, Elon Musk's son steals the show in the Oval Office. And he wants that. He likes that. That's what I'm picking up. So it's like he's just doing too much. He's doing too much. And a lot of times people who crave for the limelight or like it too much, that's not a good thing, because it's going to get to your head and you're going to think that you're invincible.
Well,
So
wait a minute. Let me ask you one question, Dana. Doesn't he have the absolute limelight? There's 7.6 billion people in the world, and he's the richest person on the planet Earth. That kind of makes you have the automatic limelight. Nobody can get you. Not Trump, not anybody.
no,
You
he
can't.
could get God. Anybody could get touched, and he's not the richest, but he
Yeah,
is
he
up
is
there.
the
He's in the
richest.
top
Elon
five.
Musk. Elon Musk is the richest man on the planet Earth. He's worth $460 billion net on the conservative estimate. There's nobody even close. So when you are Midas for the 21st century, or at least the first part of it, doesn't that kind of give
No,
you
it
an
doesn't. No,
what do you call it?
no,
That
it
means
doesn't.
look,
So what?
that means
Your money does not make you more important. So
excuse
what?
me.
The thing is,
We
he created. Well, he didn't create X, but he bought Twitter, turned it into X, and what it as a business person, yes, he's doing a great job in what he wants to do with Starlink or the Mars or whatever, whatever. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you're perfect. That doesn't mean that
look,
it. That wait, let me finish. It doesn't mean that okay, you now you have the spotlight on you, and you think what you say with everything is gold, is golden, and it's not. Yes, you could sound stupid. Yes, you could sound like a racist. Yes, you could sound like a bigot. And yes, you could just be incorrect, but you believe your own bullshit. And that's what he's coming off
well,
of.
look, excuse me. A classmate of mine at UCLA, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, is NBA GOAT, the greatest of all time in terms of scoring, holds every metric. He can call himself that. That's just basketball. Uh, I met Jim Brown, greatest NFL running back of all time. He can call himself the greatest with that. I've met other people who hold distinctions of being number one. Never met Albert Einstein, but two people I know who are now no longer with us, but who were mentors of mine did. I've met a lot of people, but I still haven't met Elon Musk, and he is the Midas with the golden touch, the richest man on earth. That
How
makes
is
you
he the
number
how is he
one.
with how is he the just because he has money,
There's
you
nobody
keep
in
saying he
human.
has the
Look,
golden touch of what? And you're naming these
excuse me.
people,
There, look.
Kareem,
If
wait,
you're
Kareem
the
Abdul-Jabbar, Jim Brown,
wait,
and all of them,
excuse me.
they were
If
great in their profession.
Dana, if he is the richest man in the 21st century, adjusting for inflation, cost of living, and everything else, that means he's the richest man who's ever lived on the planet
So,
Earth.
and what does
So,
so
in
what?
the entire history of humanity, when it comes to accumulated wealth, he's number one.
So
That gives you a special title. There's never
no, it
been a
just gives
person
you a title of
out
being
of all the
wealthy.
humans that have ever lived, there has never been anybody that rich.
Yes, there
That gives
has.
you who?
Yes, there has. Mansa
Who?
Musa. That was
Who? Oh,
centuries
hell
ago.
no. Oh, hell
Yes, he
no.
was the richest person in the
Oh,
world.
hell no.
Yes, he was.
For his time, but if you translated his wealth from the 12th, 14th
But
century up
my
into
point
modern
is,
times,
okay, so Judge,
even adjusted for
the
inflation,
point you're
it
making
wouldn't match
is,
what Musk has.
but the point you're
It
making is
wouldn't match
the
what
point
Musk
you're
has.
making, you're saying because he's so wealthy and
I
he's the
don't
richest
care.
man on earth,
Status. He's got the
that gives you
status.
carte blanche
Look,
blanche to
you
say
got
anything.
idiots that are number one in some irrelevant, inconsequential sports category, and they get bragging rights. When you're the richest man that's ever
So
lived,
what is he bragging about, his money?
well, yes, you get to deal
No,
with.
and that's
Excuse
makes
me.
that makes you a
You
pompous ass.
consolidated PayPal and you
That's
got
not
that
a
together.
sport. I'm sorry,
You've
that's not
got
a
heavy
sport.
industry with Tesla. You invented SpaceX, that is
But
now the
he's bragging.
paramount
No, no, no.
launch
But you
system
said
on the
money.
planet.
You said
You
money.
have X so you can guarantee free speech. Now you're setting up XAI to build the most advanced computers in the world right
So
here in Memphis.
why do you keep
You
reverting
are
back to
doing
his
pretty
money?
well.
But why do you wait,
There are
Judge?
hardly
Wait,
any people
you're
that
not
have done
listening to me. I'm
this
asking you a question. Why do you keep reverting back to his wealth?
because he accumulated it doing stuff that is important.
But you are
Okay,
judging,
you
a
excuse me.
person's
It's not.
character by their
He's
wealth.
not doing irrelevant stuff. It's very relevant. The First Amendment we're trying to deal with right now. The algorithms are still at work behind his back, but X is a much better forum for free
what
speech
I'm trying to
than
get
just
at
about
is
anything else out there.
why are you, and I'm about to go to the speakers, but what I'm trying to get at, why are you grading and measuring a man's character by his wealth?
Because he's done some character stuff. He's trying to protect free speech. He's
It's
trying to
going over
give
your head what I'm saying.
humanity,
It's
trying to give
flying way over your head.
humanity
You
a
don't get
way
what I'm
off
saying.
this planet
You
if
don't
they
get what I'm
need it.
saying. Forget it.
He's trying to save humanity. Boeing Aircraft, a massive corporate conglomerate, can't even get a reliable capsule to get 3 people off of the International Space Station on time. He can't. Boeing, North American Rockwell, General Dynamics merged with Martin. It cannot.
I know it's not me. Can you guys hear me?
They can't come up. Hold on. I hear you, but they can't come up with a reliable space transport system to put 200 people on the moon. He has that right now. He can put 200 men on Mars if they tell him to go. And humanity is looking at Betelgeuse, aka Betelgeuse, which is a supergiant red star about 500 light years away that's ready to go nova. And if its axis is pointing the wrong way and we happen to be in the pathway, Earth gets fried. We may need a place to go hang out for a while. He's giving it to us. He is dealing with
Mars
advancing
is
us
not
into the
livable
next
yet.
level of
That is his
intelligence.
plan.
This is not just stuff to make money. This
All
is
right
stuff
then.
that advances the human race, which is
why were
good.
you always reverting back to because he's the wealthiest man? And what
Yeah,
I'm
I
trying to
just
say
said
is
he's got that claim to
money
fame. So who
money
else
does
has it?
not build character
He can talk.
unless it's for the
Look,
negative.
you pay the cost to be the boss. If you're the richest man on earth, you can talk. And he's not doing anything bad. He's got an opinion you disagree with on South Africa. I don't care about because South Africa is part of BRICS and it is an adversary in the economic sphere. So he can do what it does. I don't care whether we're there or not. I don't think we have any manifest reason to stay there. He does, but that's his First Amendment right. And for my whole life, I've been defending people's rights to speak freely, whether I agree with them or not. So I think that is an important thing for the Republic to maintain, which is respect for the ability to speak freely without concern about whose feelings it may ruffle. So I have no problem with him on that. But I appreciate what he's doing. I know what Twitter used to be like when it was a far left propaganda engine, and now it is reverted to drifting toward the center. It's still got problems with its algorithms. When the boss is away, the mice play. But I don't have a problem with Teslas. I do not deal with PayPal, but a whole lot of people I know do. And that's cool with me. I look at some of the other billionaires, like let's take certain somebody that's been buying prosecutors and officials so he can own the place to convert it to some weird, degenerate place that matches somebody's leftist nightmare. I don't like that. But if Musk wants to talk shit when he's doing all the rest of this, that's his business. You don't have to agree with it, but he's not bad because he does it. It's no conspiracy. He has a status that nobody else in human history has had. At a point when we are at the tip of the spear for human progress, if that's what it is, In the 21st century, which in the arrow of time is as far as humans have been so far, he's the richest man in all of that. He's got a claim to fame. You might want to listen to him. And he's not just a selfish bastard. He's doing stuff that does have a positive impact on ordinary people.
Like what?
So, I mean, I give him that.
Outside of
I'll
X,
give
like
him his
what?
perks.
Outside of
What?
X, like what?
Huh?
Outside of X, what does he do that have a positive effect on people? And then
SpaceX. Humanity came up out of Africa about 95 to 100,000 years ago, anthropologists say. That's backed up by the archaeological record. All right? We spread around the world. We went from Siberia across the isthmus, which was exposed during the Ice Age, to Alaska, colonized what's now called the Americas. We went all kinds of places. Later on, the Vikings came over from Iceland, Greenland, got to the continental, what is now America. You got the Europeans came over. You got all kinds of stuff. You have humans who said, the hell with you, we can fly. In 100, what is it? 113 years ago, we got people who said the devil will fly this thing, and they flew 126 fleet. And now we are landing stuff on the moon and sending it to Mars, and we sent at least 2 objects outside the solar system into deep space. And that's in less than 125 years. So what have we done? We've done a lot. They used to say, and I've read interesting stuff that I laughed about, physicians were declaring that it was impossible for humans to travel 60 miles an hour on a train because their hearts would stop. Now the Japanese have 400-mile-an-hour super trains, and we certainly fly faster than that. And I have several friends who've been twice the speed of sound on a Concorde. And they're still, well, one of them died of natural causes, but they stayed around for a long time. So they keep telling us what we can't do, and mankind keeps advancing. We used to live in caves and call it cool. Now we live in condominiums. We've moved.
I want to get to the speakers.
Now, I'll pay, like I said, I'm hiding in the shadows, but I just had to disagree with you on
You
that.
can
I think,
disagree, and I disagree with you on all what you
okay,
said
cool.
too.
Now, I'll
Because at
back
the end
off.
of the day, it's about your character. And a lot of
Yeah,
these,
it is.
a lot of these
He's got
billionaires,
character.
especially the self-made, they don't really do it for the money. They really do it for to see how high they could go up and what they can achieve.
Yes.
So
And
for
what's
you, no, no,
wrong with
no, ain't
that?
no yes, because you equated this man having good character by the
That is
amount of
good
wealth he
character
has,
because
and
he
you
chose
can't.
to
And
do
that's what I
stuff that helps
disagree
our
with.
people.
I'm just saying
He helps
I
out
disagree
people.
with that. I don't
Look, you
judge people
couldn't
by
even
their
have this
character
Twitter
on how
one.
much money they have.
3 years ago,
No, wait.
Twitter
Can
wouldn't
we
have
get to the
allowed
speakers?
this.
Let's just get to the speakers. Let's just get to the
Okay,
speakers.
cool. But
Go
three
ahead.
years
I want to
ago,
go to
Twitter wouldn't have
anti-woke.
allowed this kind of space.
I want to go to
We would have
anti-woke.
been censored or blocked or not allowed to have it.
All right, let's
Now,
let's let's go
this
to let's go
progress.
to anti-woke. You changed your name. I don't feel like pronouncing it.
I know, yeah, and it won't let me change it back. I'm glad you knew who I was. Anyway, yeah, man, you guys started off spicy tonight. Um, no, I'd just like to point out a couple of things. As long with the judge was talking about the money, how rich he is. Let me just point out. Well, first of all, a lot of people don't know this, but he does have spectral issues, which makes him so intelligent. Which he is one of the, if not the most intelligent person on the planet, Elon. He's doing all this government work for free. He's not making any money off of it because he believes in bettering society as a whole. As far as his accomplishment for mankind, he took rocket technology that took 50 years for our government to acquire successfully and has optimized rocket propulsion systems. He invented Tesla. He's already stated multiple times that he is in it for the betterment of mankind. There are a lot of documentaries on it. So I happen to think that maybe there's some misgivings, and a lot of people get rubbed the wrong way because of his sense of humor, because of his lack of communication skills, due to the fact of whatever spectral disorder he has, be it autism or Asperger's or whatever. Simple fact is, the man's working his ass off for no dime because he believes in what's right and wrong. And he has the mind that can do three-dimensional math and hire geniuses to go through the books and catch every little detail. And that's the guy I want on my side. It's he, and as far as, yeah, he says jokes that sometimes people don't get and aren't rubbed the wrong way, but it's just his character. He's allowed to be quirky.
One
And I agree
second,
with the judge.
anti woke. I don't think he ever said he has Asperger's. So I don't want to throw that out on him like that. There is,
Well, I'm just gonna say I have two kids that have spectral disorders,
but
and
he
they're
never
highly
said he
intelligent.
had anything. Even though there
Well,
have been news
well,
outlets claiming he may be artistic, but he never said I have XYZ. I just want to make that
okay. Well,
clear.
then just remove that. He is the smartest man on the planet, hands down. So I think that it would, and his philosophies, sometimes his joking gets mixed in with his philosophies, but he's always been a patriot. Even more so, he wants the entire planet to succeed, and that's been his ambition from the jump. So I don't know. I'm kind of having a little bit of difficulty with your hangups on him, just to be honest, because yeah, he does some goofy stuff, but that's just kind of his character. So I don't see where there would be any area for concern. So that's my only thing. This guy has accomplished more in 20 years than, hell, take some of us 100 lifetimes to even come close. So I think you're being a little hard on him myself, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, we can never be hard on billionaires. So I I don't care if I'm being hard on him, but I get your point. I mean, listen, I'm not downplaying his accomplishments, and I think a lot of people don't. If you're the ones who are not born into wealth, I'm not including those. The people who work their way to get it or whatever. It was
Dana,
we don't
Dana,
know.
let me,
Let me just say this: we don't know the dark side of the business that they had to deal with to get to where they're at. But a lot of times people that achieve so much success, it's not about the materialistic part. Yeah, those are the benefits you could reap from it, but I do believe he
Dana,
doesn't do it for the money.
Dana, understand this though. He was the very first one when he started the Doge and started finding all the money. The first one to go out publicly and said this money should be returned to the people.
And that sounds good. And so now I'm looking to Congress, but that has to go through Congress. How are they going to do it, and are they going to vote to do it, and how is it going to be dispersed back to the people? So again, he's not a politician, which I like even more. However, he could say that, but then the other people that we vote to put in Congress, those are the ones that have to come up with a plan to do that if they even vote to agree to do it. So it sounds
Well, no,
good,
no,
but will it
nobody in
happen?
Congress, nobody in Congress is your friend, Republican or otherwise. And all that shit that Joe Biden did, they had the power to knock down every executive order and everything he did to screw the American people. So don't you think that Congress itself is the biggest enemy right now, because all those motherfuckers aren't doing shit that they have the legal right to do to stop this shit.
Yeah. Well, slow down on the F words, because we're um,
Oh, my
streaming
bad.
on YouTube. But um, yeah.
That's
So,
my Tourette's.
but so the thing with Elon, I like what he's doing with Doge. And yes, you could say the money should, you could give, that's you giving a suggestion, but that's as far as it goes, because the reality of it is he doesn't control, nor does he have influence on where the money goes. But I love the fact that he's exposing it, because it does put pressure on Congress to either vote on what he suggested, or to come up with something or whatever, if the people put pressure on the people they elect to go to Congress. But he doesn't have the power to actually facilitate that money to get back to the people.
Well, he has a chain of command, so technically he can't do shit without running it through Marco Rubio, who then provides it to the president.
The president doesn't even control that money getting back to the people. That's has to
Right,
be an
but
act of Congress.
right, but you're talking that it has to be sent up to the executive branch because this money involves extreme legal crimes. So it's going to have to come out in a report to the president and disperse to whoever has to deal with what issue before it even gets to Congress. Because make no mistake, there's going to be indictments from all this shit.
I hope so. And that Epstein list about to drop.
Anyway, that's all I got to say. Hope you guys enjoyed my opinion.
All right. Yes. You can stay up if you want. I'm gonna go to Hedge, then Carrie. Anybody else want to come up? Please do so. Go ahead, Hedge.
Thank you very much, Dana, for having this space and having Judge on. Thank you, Judge, for all your insights. First, I just want to say it's been an absolute awakening for my wife and I since we discovered your space, Dana, and listening to the knowledge that Judge brings forward, as well as yourself and the back and forth that you guys do. It's been truly incredible. And just to let you know, we're from Western Canada, so we don't know a whole lot about what goes on down there. And my eyes have been so opened. I eternally grateful for what you guys have brought, and also to Elon to make this possible so that we can see this and not just a media narrative that we always, have been accustomed to and watched. On Elon, because that's the topic at hand, I really got to say, what would we be doing right now if Trump hadn't got in and Elon wasn't there by his side? I think this team is truly, truly going to save America. And for the first time in a while, I've said, you know what, I would actually move to the US. So that's all I got to say. Hope that makes sense.
That was a good question you posed. Where would we be if Trump and Elon wasn't working together?
Right? Where would we be?
Judge, are you
We're
still
looking
there?
at.
I'm still
Oh,
here.
okay.
I mean,
All right. So Carrie, then Twizzle. Go ahead, Carrie. I can't hear. Is Carrie speaking? Judge, can you hear me?
I hear you.
Is Carrie speaking?
I don't hear Carrie.
Okay, we can't.
I don't hear either.
Okay. So Carrie, we can't hear you. Maybe go out and come back. Drop down and come back. All right. Twizzle.
Hey Dana, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Everything's good. Judge, how you doing, young man? How you feeling?
I'm managing.
That's all that counts, man. It's not about me, it's about you, We in a situation right now to where I love my elders and I cherish my elders. So I wanna, give you your stripes and your flowers while you're here, man. But to the topic of
I'm
the
still
room,
breathing pretty regular.
that's all that counts. As long as you still healthy, man. As long as you
All
still
right.
healthy and got the young girls going crazy. That's all that count, man. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I just want to speak on the topic of the room. Is Elon Musk doing too much? I really feel no. I'm kind of glad he's doing this because to every dark side, there's a silver lining in it. Now, everybody's complaining about what he's doing, finding all this money. I look at it like this: good, he's finding our money for our reparations. They said at the end of this, he's going to find over $1 trillion. And they keep talking about where are they going to get our money for our reparations from? Well, hey, Elon Musk just found it right there. You know what I'm saying? So to what they're doing, they can be used for them and against them, and I like it. You know, my uncle, he's 83 years old. He always tell me that sometimes the order to get things right, the good gonna have to suffer. But if the good is okay, I mean, just as long as the good is, got their stuff together, they're gonna be able to manage. And I kind of like what's going on right now with the immigration and with the Doge and how they're going through the books, seeing what's going on. I like it. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, we're going to have to get some straightening done. And the only way you gonna get some straightening unless you got a hot iron. You know what I'm saying? So hey, I just wanted to just come in and say what's up to Judge and just offer my 2 cents in and say what's up to the room, man. It's been a minute, Dana, since I've been up here. Happy New Year's. I haven't spoke to you this year. And I see we got the family here. We got Big Chief, we got the company and a few others. So hey, shout out to everybody. And most important, shout out to you, Judge Brown. You know what I mean? I appreciate you, your work, the years you can put in and all the sacrifices you done made to get where you at. So shout out to you, Judge. You are loved out here in Oakland, California. And hey, you got me as a staunch soldier and you got me as a staunch warrior. So hey, shout out to you, Judge. Happy New Year's.
Appreciate it.
And Happy New Year to you too. Go ahead, Carrie.
Okay, can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, well, I just wanted to say thank you, Dana, and for allowing me to speak on your space. This is the first time. And Judge, I watched you all the time on TV. You were the best judge on TV, I thought. You always
Thank you.
you always listened and gave empathy regardless to the women. But then if they did wrong, you told them how it was. So I appreciate your honesty. Anyway, I just want to say um, that I think it's cool about Elon Musk. I can see some of y'all's points, but he's going to save those people that are lost in space, which NASA apparently can't. So, um, and I don't know when that's going to transpire, and I get so angry when I hear all the waste in this USAID. I didn't even know what that was until I had to go educate myself and read up on it. And oh my God. I mean, no wonder everyone is up in arms about it because those are the guilty ones. They're getting cutbacks. They're getting kickbacks. I mean, like cutbacks, kickbacks. I mean, you tell me Iran is going to create uh, a book on uh, transgenders. Give me a break. It's a kickback on to someone. I just can't believe all the BS. And it's getting worse. It just, every time you think, it's just crazy. I mean, they're paying monthly for companies that have already finished the job. Like they'll have a contract for 3 months and they're still paying that person. It's 20 years later. It's just unbelievable. It's like the deep state money. And that's why all these libtards are getting upset because they don't want to get caught. But anyway, I'm all for Elon doing that because, like I said, he's doing it for nothing. He believes in our country. And I know he's kind of weird and awkward, but there's a lot of famous people that have a lot of money are weird and awkward. It's just their personality. It doesn't bother me. If we were all like, it would be boring. So, anyway, that's
Well, let
all I
me
wanted to
interject a
say.
little bit. I don't have a problem with him being awkward and different, and honestly I think that's what I like the most about him. It's not that because at the end of the day, he is a billionaire and wealthy people don't like no. Um right.
Absolutely.
And so it's more so a power thing. And then this is what I'm saying to where um I think I think because a lot of people, a lot of Americans are glad that he's exposing the waste from previous this past administration and throughout the decades, right?
Yeah.
But I feel as though sometimes because then I'm gonna bring South Africa into the fold.
Hmm.
You get what do you call it when you get too big for your britches to where you think that you're Mr. Untouchable
Yeah,
somewhat.
I know what you mean. I can't think of the word. How about you, Judge? Do you know what the word is?
Yeah. So,
Well,
uh
I was thinking about something else, but I think you guys come up with the word. I was going to talk about a personal experience with governmental waste, and I'll tell you about it when you get through.
okay. Well,
How
I
about
just wanted to say real quick though, just to interject real quick, but so it's what he's doing for Doge, and I'm like, yeah, he's I love what he's doing with Doge and everything else, but I think we as Americans, just because we have a sigh of relief, don't fall asleep. And we
Exactly.
have to still be alert and aware and make sure people are doing their jobs, even if we are liking or we're giving them great approval ratings. Still make sure that they're doing their job, and to call someone saying that, oh, this person needs to be an international criminal and you're doing this and you're doing this, all that pointing the fingers. I just look at it, listen, stick to what you are here to do, stop worrying about
I
everybody
see.
else. So that's where I'm coming from, but yeah.
And let me just say one more thing before I go. I just, when you hear about all this waste, I mean, it's just like, they come after people like me. Um, IRS. Just, you know, and if you don't pay them, and you can't, like for me, I couldn't have hired an attorney for this minimal thing I had, but it was a lot of money for me to pay the IRS. And then you see all this waste that it just really pisses me off.
Yeah, I definitely agree. um
If I might
yeah.
interject at this point, what Musk and Doge are doing is like, say in England, they're getting ready to build a new mall. England's got a whole lot of history. So when they start digging the foundations for the mall, they stumble on an artifact. They call in a team of archaeologists, and when they start digging, they find layer after layer of ancient settlements going back 2, 3, 4,000 years. It's the same thing that what Doge is doing. It's digging into the bureaucracy and it's finding artifacts and fossil levels of the bureaucracy that may still be getting funded, even though there's nobody to pay the money out to. So people just take advantage of it. Now, 53, 54 years ago, I was doing an intern thing with a DC think tank. I mostly worked at night, okay? So I took it upon myself to get another job, and I went down to HUD, Housing and Urban Development. That's what the education department was under in those days, and I got a job. Well, when my internship was up and I was going back to Los Angeles, I went in to resign from the HUD thing. The director said, "Oh my God, no, no, no! Please don't do that. That'll screw up our whole budgetary situation." I said, "Well, what do you want me to do?" He said, "Well, just give me your forwarding address and I'll have your paycheck sent there." So I went back to Los Angeles. I stayed there about 6 months and then I came to Tennessee. I'd gotten out of law school and I got my paycheck for 6 months in Los Angeles. I hadn't showed up a day for work. And for 3 more years, when I got back to Tennessee, every month I got my paycheck. And I hadn't shown up for work for 3.5 years, but I got paid for 3.5 years. I kept getting a paycheck until they dissolved the department, or excuse me, that particular section of the department. So there's a lot of waste in that. I know, for example, having worked for the feds, I worked for EEOC. There was a situation. I'm a lawyer, and they have people who were GS 14s who couldn't write up what they needed to write up. So the boss said, "I tell you what, you're GS 9. I'll pay you like you're a GS 11 if you do what these GS 14s can't do because they're not a trained lawyer." So I was writing up what the 14s were getting paid to do and couldn't do. And I would look around, and there were maybe 25 or 30 people in that particular section, and maybe 5 people were doing all of the work. Now, a reality check. If you want to reach the maximum audience and you do social media and you're monetized trying to make money off of it, when do you try to hit up your social media audience? during the workday when they are supposed to be doing the boss's work to earn their paycheck. They're listening in on social media in their cubicles because they're bored. So what's going on is you got 100 employees, but only 15 of them are working hard. So get rid of the other 85 and put them into something else. You see, we've got a dirty little secret in this country, which is we have allowed industrial technology and computerization to obsolete a whole lot of working people. And we've got all of these band aids instead of having some kind of programs together to get people brought up into the 21st century like everybody else in the industrial world does. So we've got nice little SOPs where we put people who are surplus to the labor requirements to work, pay them a good amount of money, and we've got years and years of bureaucracy. And literally, I can think of a few situations where the money started out in 1936. It's still going, but there's nobody there to collect it. So others take the money out for other things. And then in the 60s and the 50s, there was something that promoted this. We were in the midst of a very heavy Cold War with the Soviet Union. So, what wound up happening is to disguise for national security purposes things that were for top secret affairs, black ops, and that kind of thing. You started getting these famous little, what looked to be boondoggles of $500 toilet seats. The toilet seat didn't cost $500, but that was a way to cover money being appropriated for black ops. So, with that being a precedent, we have a lot of stuff right now that we pay big money for that essentially are black ops, not for defense oriented projects, but for social agendas, for DEI, and all kinds of rainbow nonsense. And that's what a lot of this money is spent on. And a lot of people do these kind of things where they raid funds to use monies appropriated for one purpose, they use it for another. And that's where we get a lot of wastage. So I'm surprised at the far left getting upset that the expenditure of tax dollars is now subject to a demand to be accounted for. I just don't get it. Except, oh, some people get cut out of their favorite little agendas. Now, I'll pass the mic. Anyway,
Oh,
Okay.
excuse me. Can I answer Judge one question, Dana, please?
I'm
Or
listening.
wait. I
I'm
just want
listening.
to make sure it's in my head or else I'll forget. But oh, just go ahead with the next one. I'm sorry.
Well, ask your question before you forget it.
I already forgot it.
Just
It
write.
was
You
No,
need
something.
keep a
I have
notebook and
that. That
write
happens to me
write it
too.
down.
I know. I should have, and I just have so much going on right now in my head. It wasn't was having a blonde moment or anything, but here's a look.
Yeah, when I'm in spaces like this, especially if people talk for a while, not to say Judge was, but a lot of people will filibuster for 15, 20 minutes and they'll go over like 10 points and then you will only be able to address the most recent one in your memory. So you write it down and you could address all the points. Um,
I know. You're so right. And I usually try to write it down, but I'm at a place that I don't have a pen.
Fair
You
enough.
know, Carrie, I understand because I forget stuff too.
Yeah. If
It
I
is
think
what it is.
about it, I'll put
Yeah,
my
it'll
hand
come
back
back.
up. Thank
Um,
you, dear.
so I'm gonna go to
You know,
Pete.
you can take notes on your cell phone
Yeah.
while you're talking on this particular venue.
Just
Well,
type it into somebody's text message and then don't send it. Just use it as a notepad.
yeah, I could do that. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yep.
So I'm gonna go to Pete, then
Thank you.
Peter. Go ahead, Pete.
Hey, good evening, guys. What's up,
Hi,
Judge and
Dana.
Dana and everybody?
Hello.
Oh
Hi.
man, I think I'm loving everything we're seeing. I think we're in great shape. I see the light coming on and the cockroaches beginning to scatter. And I'm excited. I see a lot of people, a lot of citizen journalists out there with
Oh wait,
microphones.
I'm sorry. I said Pete and then Peter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think y'all have the same. damn near the same name because he was up first. But I mean, I guess it doesn't matter if Pete doesn't mind, but Peter.
I
But
yield.
go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Pete.
He's already got his momentum going.
All right.
Please continue.
Appreciate it. I'm seeing a lot of citizen journalists go up to Congress people, senators, and just blatantly ask them questions how they made, specifically Senator Warren, how she came up across her magnificent wealth on the salary of a public servant. And it's just amazing to see it. And I'm excited to see a lot of people go to federal prison. I think that I think that this will actually go towards general deterrence as an aim of sentencing, right? Specifically, like we saw with Menendez last week and two of the other co-conspirators. When you're getting 11-year terms at 65, 70 years old, it's a veritable death sentence at that point. So I think that it'll make people think twice. And it's exciting to see. I want to see more go to prison, and I want to see them go to gang facilities, not just country clubs. I want to go see them have to hit the yard and put in a piece of work to be able to survive. Because I think that that will go a long way towards cutting out this nonsense and stopping these gonifs and thieves from stealing all of our money, which they've been doing for the last 30, 40 years. So I'm excited for that.
Amen to that.
Okay, so here's a question before I get to you, Peter. No, Pete. Before I get to Pete, these people somebody need to be going to prison. But will we see a person in Congress, a congressional senator or House representative person with handcuffs because of Doge?
Menendez just got 11 years.
Yeah, it wasn't because of Doge. But yeah, he did get 11 years, but that was down the pipeline during under the Biden or whatever. I guess he pissed somebody off, but I'm saying specifically what Elon is uncovering, and Democrats, we all know they're losing their damn minds. Do you really think that someone will be in handcuffs? Like they're not going to arrest congressional leaders?
Why not? They've arrested him for insider trading in the past. There's been many cases. Like look at Rod. What was his name? Rod Blagojevich got arrested for trying to allegedly sell Obama's Senate seat.
Yeah.
You know, this is something I
Then
think that
Trump
they're
just he
showing.
just gave him a pardon too.
He did pardon him, yeah. But what I'm saying is that this is how you start to clean up what has been going on for decades is you have to have teeth in the law. If there's no teeth and you can get a slap on the wrist or just pay a fine, it's just the cost of doing business. It's the same as with the mafia. The only reason these guys started to cooperate is by getting 30-year terms, life terms, that they'll never come home. That you use the same type of apparatus here. You put teeth in the law, you make sure you crack the back of these people. And I think I could see no one more likely to do this than the Trump Justice Department, especially if we get Kash Patel in there confirmed as the FBI director. Look at what's going on with ICE with Tom Homan. I can't wait till he starts going after some of these lefty nut jobs in these blue cities and starts taking these people out in cuffs. It's going to be wonderful.
Yeah, and did you see that Chelsea Clinton? She came out and tweeted, "Leave my family alone, and we're not perfect, but blah blah." And it's like people are running for the hills.
As they should be. Imagine somebody robbed you for 30 years. 30 years. This is money you could have gave to your children. This is money you could have gave to whoever you wanted to have a better life, to live a better life before you expire. And you got these rat bastards that think they could just do whatever they want. This is the best time in American history right now, is watching all these pieces of crap get their comeuppance. That's exactly what they have coming to them. And I cannot wait to watch it all happen.
I'm gonna go to Pete, then lead, and then I'll go back to anti-woke. I see hands. Go ahead, Pete.
Hi, Dana. Hi, Judge. Good to
Hi.
speak with you again. So, back to the subject. I think the word everybody was looking for when someone gets too big for the britches was megalomania. And there was a great movie about that, The Mouse That Roared, with Peter Ustinov as the ill-fated leader of the Duchy of Grand Fenwick. If anybody wants to watch a movie about a country that gets that way. In any case, back to Elon. The things that he's doing, I think, in Doge, and going in and basically, peeling the onion, for lack of a better term, to expose the layers of corruption that have been there kind of festering for probably decades. It wouldn't surprise me to see some of this stuff go all the way back to Harding and even beyond that. But I'm thinking that, the repercussions of this, we're seeing the activist judges get into the mix now and start issuing orders that the transgender and gender affirmation websites be put back up, and blocking actions by of the executive order from President Trump. And Judge, I'm just wondering what your perspective is on what kind of proceedings we'll see in order to defeat those. What's the likelihood of seeing those injunctions and blockages struck down, and ultimately what direction things are going to move after that?
Okay, what happens is the Supreme Court is created by the Constitution of the United States, and the Constitution delegates to Congress the authority to create inferior courts as deemed necessary. Okay, you get them. There is this thing where we have this case 222 years old. It's called Marbury versus Madison. Madison was the president of the United States at the time. And the case stands for the principle that the judiciary has absolute authority to rule on the constitutional constitutionality of legislation or the actions of any branch of government. If somebody doesn't like it and the Supreme Court's ruled on it, the remedy is to get Congress to change the law. If you get what's going on with the inferior courts, what happens is a federal district court, which is at the bottom of the rung, has made a ruling. Now, there may be another federal judge on the same level in another part of the country that rules on the exact same issue in a different way. They will have their decisions reviewed by their respective appellate courts, which are known as circuit courts of appeal. Now, when the circuit courts of appeal rule, if they all rule consistently, then the Supreme Court usually denies review. If they don't and they're inconsistent, they hear it. Now, before we get too upset, I'll ask you, do you support the Second Amendment? I do, right? Okay. Let's assume that you do. The Biden administration, and before that, Obama administration, came up with some dog stupid stunts about restricting the Second Amendment. But we see, for example, this thing with pistol braces, which ATF had sent out many letters over the years saying were legal. All of a sudden, at the urging of the Biden administration, they declared that they were now illegal without a $200 tax stamp and a declaration that they were attached to a short barrel rifle. Well, the same level district court judge that held up the deportation of these three defendants to Guantanamo, not deportation, but the transfer there, was on the same level when he said ATF can't do that and the Biden administration can't just on a signature disregard the Second Amendment. It's the same thing. So if we're going to support the action of a circuit court judge down in Texas in enjoining ATF from enforcing that bump stock ban, then we have to support this particular judge's authority to do what he did, even if it's a jackass, stupid thing he did. Now, what's going on is these people are rightfully detained by the Department of Corrections for the United States, or if they haven't been convicted, they're under the aegis of the U.S. Marshal's Office. So if the U.S. Marshal's Office wants to, for security purposes, transfer them to Guantanamo, that's one thing. A lot of times, and you see this with Diddy and some other people they did about 15 years ago when they protested the fraudulent mortgage foreclosures that Soros was behind all across the country. What they wound up doing is having Homeland Security go after these people because, under the law, Homeland Security can claim they are threats to national security and get them held incommunicado, which is what's happening with Diddy up in New York. You notice Homeland Security served the warrants on his California mansion and one of the two mansions in Florida he had on the same lot. So they get to declare that he is a security threat, so they're holding him incommunicado. The FBI is the one that actually was involved in setting up what's the so-called Mann Act, of which they've got 3 counts against Diddy pending, and that's what they got R. Kelly with, the Mann Act. And you wonder why, and that is so that they can evoke them holding people incommunicado. So what's going on is the same law that allows that nobody had a problem with when it came to the appellate process, is the same one that would allow the U.S. Marshals to say, hey, these guys are better off in Guantanamo because we can't guarantee their safety or secure them from being sprung or escaping or whatever else they may do. They're supposed to be members of a dangerous cartel, and we need to control this. So that's going to fail. But you see, he's within his authority to do what he did, even if what he did was a damn stupid stunt. And see, the other thing is that we've allowed the judiciary to be subject to too many trends. We have people that are federal judges who literally, one I can think of, I'm acquainted with, is on a circuit court of appeals, graduated from law school after putting her husband through law school. She got sworn into the bar, and 4 days after she was sworn into the bar, she was made a circuit court judge with unlimited civil and criminal jurisdiction. And within 14 months of graduating from law school, never having had a client, never having had a case as a lawyer, she was made a federal district court judge. Now that person is sitting on a court of appeals, a circuit court of appeals, never had a trial as a lawyer, never had an appeal as a lawyer, never had a client as a lawyer. And her legal experience is walking into a courtroom at 1 month past being 29 years old, past being 30 years old, 4 days after being sworn into her first bar. So that's not very much experience. So you will expect to get stupidity coming out of that, which was the case, but they still have the authority. Unfortunately, we can't impeach people for incompetence unless it is extremely gross. You have to commit some kind of culpable criminal or ethical wrong, and stupidity and ignorance and wrongheadedness do not count. So we're stuck with it. That's just our rules. But you see, in the judicial system, it's one step at a time. People start talking about, oh my God, what are we going to do because the court denied? No, they didn't deny it. They just said, we don't have a record. It's not complete. You need to send it back so they can finish up what they have to deal with. So next we can get it. And that's what they call a predicate, one foundation after another. You want to introduce evidence, you have to set forth the foundation. You want to get something decided by an appellate court, you have to lay the foundation below. You can't just say, we decide this is a question of law that needs to be resolved, so we go directly to the U.S. Supreme Court. It doesn't work that way. unless it is a dispute between states or between states and the United States government, then it goes directly to the Supreme Court. So, one step at a time. The law may be ponderous, but it works with an assurance. So that's what we're going through.
Judge,
And
are we going to see that with Judge
So,
Engelmeyer's ruling as well? Where
yeah,
he
all of the
okay.
above. They may be absolutely stupid. But sometimes what
so
happens is you get a ruling in the Ninth Circuit that is adverse to what the Sixth Circuit did, that is even with what the Fourth Circuit did, that the Tenth Circuit said was crazy, and the Second Circuit came up with something way out in left field someplace, and the Supreme Court says, all right, we'll take it. And they said the buck stops with the nine of us, so we will rule on whether or not it's constitutionally suspect or it's permissible. And if you don't like it,
okay,
get Congress to change the law.
gotcha. So when these predicated steps, one step predicated on the next, fall into place, and things kind of align, what's the process of striking these down? Does there have to be another, um, appellate court, or a circuit court that, makes an adverse ruling, and from there, there may be other rulings like you were mentioning that jumps it up to the Supreme Court, or can these be struck down by any other
Well,
means?
yes and no. Some things can become moot because the problem corrects itself. But in the federal system, you have federal magistrates, tax court magistrates, and such like. But the first judicial level is what they call the district court. And you have several divisions of court in a district court. And then above the district court is the Circuit Court of Appeals. So there's the Second Circuit that handles the East Coast, New York, D.C. area. There's the Ninth Circuit that handles California. You've got a 10th Circuit that handles Oregon, Washington, and up there. You've got the Sixth Circuit that handles Tennessee, Arkansas, et cetera, et cetera. The Fifth that handles Mississippi and stuff like that. And the rulings are inconsistent. After the Circuit Court of Appeals, you have the U.S. Supreme Court. Ordinarily, you can't automatically go to the U.S. Supreme Court. You have to petition for a writ of certiorari. And if the court grants cert, they say it's worthy of hearing it because it's a necessary point of law that needs to be resolved. If they don't, then they deny cert and it stays with the district. Well, the Circuit Court of Appeals, and whatever they rule on stands. It might have the 5 circuit courts of appeals have ruled on it the same way. The Supreme Court may just affirm it or say, we send it back, we deny cert. So it goes District Court, Circuit Court of Appeals, and then Supreme Court.
And Judge, these
Gotcha.
cases, right, that are brought up, the justices won't take them up unless they know that there's a chance that they would be able to push through what they want to have happen. Is that right? Like
Well,
if
in
it's
other words, it's got to be a worthy controversy. In other words, if the law is clear, they're not going to hear it. That's for the lower courts. All they're doing is setting guidance for every other court in the United States when it comes to what does the Constitution require. That's what they
Um,
do. Now, let me say something about what I think Trump's doing too. One step at a time. This thing with birthright citizenship arose because the 14th Amendment was trying to overcome the Dred Scott decision, which held
Slavery,
that
yeah.
a slave or a Negro could not be a citizen. So that was still good law when the Civil War was over, even though the slaves had been emancipated by the 13th Amendment. So what they did is they put in there that anyone subject to the jurisdiction of the United States is a citizen if they were born here. There was no intention of applying it to immigrants. Now, what does it mean subject to the jurisdiction of the United States? That just means that U.S. law applies. Anywhere U.S. law applies is U.S. territory. In other words, it's a state, it's a territory, it's a protectorate, it's a naval or military base, it's a zone, it is a border, it is something like that. It's an American embassy or an American consul. And those are the places where American law applies. And the terminology is 150 years out of date, but when it says subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, translation in layman's words, it's just wherever U.S. law controls what happens. If you are born where U.S. law controls what happens, you are subject to what the 14th Amendment says. Now, some 25, 35, 40 years ago, they started talking about applying this to immigrants. You got anchor babies, but that was not in the amendment. That is the same thing as this provision of the 15th Amendment that was designed to say all citizens are to be treated the same, all persons are to be treated the same. But in the late 1870s and 1880s, the appellate courts said, forget the Negroes who were slaves that this was intended to. The language seems plain. We will apply it to this fictional person that has been newly created by the states known as the corporation. So you find that the U.S. Supreme Court, even just a few years ago, applied the ruling again to the corporate entity and said you cannot restrict corporations from political activity any more than you can restrict a live person from political activity. I'm surprised that no one is thought to have each corporation that is incorporated in a given state be able to vote in that state by, say, the CEO of the corporation casting a vote for the corporate entity. I'm surprised nobody's tried that.
Hmm.
Now,
But
the other thing that I find interesting is that when you expand the law, what sometimes happens is that when somebody is full of zeal, like they were right after the Civil War, they might not contemplate what's going to happen 150 years later. So, what Trump may be doing with his executive order dealing with no more respect for this so-called anchor baby thing or this thing about birthright citizenship, which by the way is not stipulated as such in the amendment. That's a later term applied to it. He can simply say, as chief diplomat under the Constitution, which it says specifically he is, for diplomatic purposes, this executive chooses not to exercise his discretion and attempt to promote it. That's what they did with a lot of stuff under the Obama and Biden administrations. And every president has done that kind of thing. It's within his discretion. Now, one last remark, because somebody always raises it. The United States is not a corporation, nor is it modeled on corporations. When the United States came into being in 1789 as a result of the ratification of the Constitution, there weren't any corporations in America. That was a new thing created by the states somewhat later to emulate the limited liability company that was subject to Crown Charter in England. So, what winds up happening is corporations are modeled on the United States government. You have the citizens who correspond to the stockholders. You have the stockholders able to elect the board of directors. You have the citizens who can elect a board of electors known as the Electoral College. The board of directors selects a chief executive officer for the corporation, and the board of electors, the Electoral College, selects an executive officer for the United States. Corporations were modeled on the structure of the United States government. The United States government, with its House and Senate under Article 1 of the Constitution, it says Congress shall consist of two chambers, the House of Representatives and the Senate. Guess what? That's 2,400 years old, and it was modeled on the Roman thing, where the Romans had the House of Plebes that corresponded to the House of Representatives, and the Roman senators that are 1-1 directly corresponding to the U.S. Senate, which, by the way, until the 17th Amendment was not subject to election. It was subject to appointment by a state governor or a state legislative body.
All
So
right.
our government is modeled on the Roman model.
Real
Um,
quick, Dana,
wait,
real
no,
quick.
no, no. I have to get to Lee. I have to get to Lee. I'll swing back to you, Peter. Go ahead, Lee, and then I'll go back to the hands.
Peace, peace. Can you hear me, Dana?
I
Yeah.
hear you.
Peace, peace. What's going on? I appreciate y'all, you guys. What's going on, Just Joe? Listen, real quick, man. I'm gonna make mine fast. Um, I wanted to ask you to break down the EEOC. I've heard different conversations. People are. It seems like they're using scare tactics, right? They're saying Trump is gonna roll back to 1965, the civil rights and all that good stuff. And so I really just wanted you to kind of go into it. If you did already, forgive me, I wasn't in here. But if you could kind of break that down, is he trying to take away civil rights by doing that, Judge?
No, he's not. He's trying to make sure they get enforced. I worked with EEOC 50 some years ago, all right? And well, I was employed by EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. They're usually charged with enforcing Title VII to the Civil Rights Act. That prohibits discrimination against someone based on race, color, national origin, based on sex, based on, as amended, age and medical condition, and religion. Now, what has happened is that this far left with this DEI stuff, they have taken that which says you cannot discriminate against somebody for this, and they have attempted to expand it into the LGBTQIA thing, which is their right under the First Amendment to attempt to do that. But they've attempted to co opt EEOC and change it into something that promotes a certain somebody or position or point of view or status at the expense of others. So that becomes reverse discrimination. So, what Trump et al. Are trying to do is stop the so called reverse discrimination. Because here's the thing, every one of these categories, with the exception of religion, there exists an objective test to it. You can see what a person's complexion is, whether they're dark, pale, fair, whatever, red-headed, blonde, nappy headed, whatever it may be, coarse, black haired, dark eyed. You can see this. And based on your perception, some people might be prejudiced against that. When it comes to national origin, the vital records will reveal where you came from. If you don't know what somebody's race is, outside of the color thing, you can run an objective DNA test and find out with assurance. But you have one category, religion, that is subject to somebody's personal declaration. Other people are trying to co opt Title VII and what EEOC is supposed to be about and turn it into something where another declaration, that is, your choice of sexual orientation, practice, or what you think you are, becomes controlling. But there's an interesting thing. You cannot compel somebody to do anything other than back off and not discriminate against someone for their personal choice of religion. Likewise, you can do nothing but that when it comes to somebody's choice of what they perceive themselves to be, whether they think they're one of 126 fluid genders or they think normally and they're male and or, or female, not or, male or, not may and or. Okay, so in any event, what happens is they are attempting to impose your so called sexual orientation in a fashion they cannot do for religion. You can't put a cross up in a courthouse. You can't put a crescent up for Islam in the courthouse. You cannot put a six-pointed Jewish star up in the courthouse. You can't have an image of Buddha or six-armed Shiva, but you can put up a rainbow cult thing. And if you don't get what it is, rainbow LGBTQIA, nothing wrong with anybody wanting to be gay, that's their business. But the cult is a faith. And if you don't get it, check out Buddhism, because Buddhism does not have a God. You can have a God or you cannot have a God. Pick your God, it's your choice. It's about a system. It's a system of philosophy, and so is this rainbow cult thing. It's a system of nihilistic philosophies where you have no obligation, no duty. You don't have to behave as a man or a woman. You can pick what you want. If you want to be a coward, that's fine. So there are no duty, honor, obligation, principle, courage, bravery aspects to it. So they're trying to impose it. And if you don't believe it, go walk through your local school and see how many rainbows you see in the hallway and how many sick looking trannies dressed up as madams in a whore brothel who are talking to the children and reading to them as early as 3 and 4 years old in public libraries. Now, you see, that's what the big fight is about. And Elon Musk, Trump, they're trying to do the things to turn it back being neutral. And some people say they're trying to destroy it, but actually they're trying to reestablish it. Now, I have a unique background that I will just touch on. 1967, myself and some other students in the Black Student Union at UCLA, there were 153 black full-time students out of 64,000 full-time students at UCLA at that time. Half of them were grad students, half of us were undergrads. We got together with a few black professors and we came up with an affirmative action program, one of the first in the nation. It did not base what it did on race. We were race neutral. We just talked about this other factor that they had been bringing athletes in on, which was a competitive assessment, a grade point average, aptitude test, and or other factors that indicated an ability to succeed. So we said, if you can bring in an athlete with that third category, then there's certain other students who have had to work full time. So if they're trying to get into grad school, they might not have the best GPA compared to somebody else because they had to work 35, 40 hours a week instead of getting a free ride from the parents. They might have dedicated themselves to causes that are meritorious. So you must consider what you do when you assess the admissibility of an athlete. What is the fallout we will get as a society from educating this person versus somebody similarly situated who has not demonstrated the ability to overcome adversity? We carefully declared that it has to be race neutral. Now, when Justice Roberts wrote that opinion on affirmative action a year ago, he almost word for word quoted what we had back in 1967 at UCLA and what had spread around the country for affirmative action, which is what morphed into being the Civil Rights Act of 1968, which incorporated Title VII modifications. So you got Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. We lost out because there were some Negroes that were trying to get into Berkeley's medical school for the University of California. That's up in the Bay Area. They had been partying, having a good time, going to frat games and frat parties and hanging out, playing bid whist. So they didn't have the grade point average that other students might have, but if you just compared black folk and nothing else, they might come out on top of the heap of blacks. So they wanted to get rid of what they call the political test, those other factors that indicated an ability to succeed, and say, just pick a quota of black people and bring them in and just pick the highest scoring blacks without anything else to compensate for that. And we were hollering, hey, that'll be reverse discrimination. We'll lose it. But they were selfish. They worked up a deal with Bakke, who was a prospective student, and the faculty at the Berkeley Medical School, who wanted to get rid of this because they didn't want black doctors or Hispanic doctors or Native American doctors or Asian doctors to compete with them. So they let the colored in on this deficient scale. Bakke wound up suing. It was a setup. Bakke got in, and these Negroes got into medical school, and they ruined it for everybody else because the inevitable happened 50 years later. But 50 some years later, when Roberts ruled, he just set it back to the way it was when it started off in late 1966, early 1967. So EEOC is about equal employment opportunity, and that's the C stands for commission. So there's been a lot of back and forth, and they have added so much red tape to the whole thing that you just got fired, you've been discriminated against, but you can't afford to hire a lawyer to protect you. So the only people that can do anything or your white feminists who tended to be fired from the most lucrative jobs. They had money in the bank or a husband or a paramour who was supporting them. They could afford the lawyers. So right now, EEOC is protecting women, but nobody else. And now they're trying to modify that category of woman to include anybody who makes the claim. So this guy's still got a penis wearing the jock strap under his workout panties, and he's got on a sports bra, and he claims to be a woman, so he gets in under that. Now, all Trump and company are doing is trying to equal the field so that EEOC goes back to what it was supposed to be. Now, excuse me for taking that long time, but I guess I'm lecturing because there's a lot of stuff that the newspapers ought to publish explaining this, but they choose not to.
I feel like I'm in class right now, Judge. It's great.
Thank you.
I love it.
So I want to do this.
Oh no.
But I'm not going. You know what? We did start late, and I think Judge, I think you want to talk tonight. So I'm not going to say I'm gonna end it at 12.
Whatever it wasn't me.
Can you guys can hear me, right? So can you hear me? Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we can
So
hear
Yeah.
you.
if anybody want to request to come up, please do so. It is open mic, so it's not just about Elon Musk or South Africa. So it is whatever you want to ask or talk about, and I'll open up the floor for the speakers that's up here. Because I know y'all wanted to swing back and mention. Oh, and another thing, a little FYI, I'm not good with titles. I don't like this title. This was just something I threw together very last minute. So if anybody good with content making, creating content titles, just send me a message on X because I need to hire someone to do that.
Absolutely, girl. Definitely. But I think
Hey,
you've got an awesome space, and I have reposted it to get your name out there because I've never heard of you, but I'm really enjoying it. And
Yeah,
I
this
remember,
is actually the judge space. I just facilitated for him because he don't got time to be bringing people up and doing all the other stuff. So I kind of just do it, but it's technically a
well, now that makes sense because you were so hard on his ass earlier. I
well, we
mean,
was having
oh my God. I mean, it was just like you were attacking him.
Well, we did this
no.
last week. We're not going to do it again this week,
Yeah,
please.
no. We have our
Oh no, I'm just joking
yeah,
it,
we
but
have
I'm
our
just
stats.
telling you how I see it.
Yeah,
Or no, not how I see it, how I hear it.
yeah.
But I
We have our
but
stats, but we've been
but
knowing each
that's
other for
cool.
over 5 years. So
Oh no, that's
yeah.
cool. I just think I mean had to be. I don't know how the judge would have put up with it.
I got a question for you, Judge. Anti
Please.
woke here.
What
All
say?
right,
Oh,
this 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 may this may be a I don't know. This may have been covered. I'm just not quite getting it. So first of all, number one is I just saw today it popped up that the corporations involved are I guess for lack of a better term beneficiaries of USID or USAID are now have a class action lawsuit to stop Trump's actions. I think you brought up corporations earlier. So I'm concerned of what the process of that is. And then the other question I have is the Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, and with all these cases that are definitely lawfare, does she have any powers to stop any of this from going through the elongated process of due process? Can she step in? Can she regulate? What? How does that work?
Okay, she is a cabinet officer for the agency is the Department of Justice. That includes the FBI, ATF, and other entities like that. It includes the Secret Service, the Treasury Department is regulated by them and directed by them, but that's also under the Treasurer. Uh, but the Attorney General of the United States, in essence, handles the legal business of the United States. Congress has the authority under the Constitution to set inferior courts, and each inferior court, each district, has a prosecutor. It's known as the U.S. Attorney. That is an appointed official. The U.S. attorneys are subordinate to the Attorney General of the United States, who is subordinate to the U.S. President, and she functions as his cabinet official so he can carry out his function as chief executive. Now, the interesting thing about some of the stuff that is doing is that so-called experts aren't really experts when they assess this, and the left-wing media is misguiding the people. The Constitution makes it clear that the President of the United States is the chief executive of the United States with absolute authority to make and negotiate treaties and conduct the diplomacy of the United States. Let's say, to give you an example of what is in consideration, let's supposing that Congress says we're directing that you give $180 million to the Russians to finance the expansion of an LGBTQIA sensitivity program. Well, Congress may have appropriated that money, but they have absolutely no constitutional authority to control the U.S. diplomacy. That authority rests exclusively with the President of the United States or his delegated subordinates, meaning ambassadors. He appoints the ambassadors subject to the ratification of the U.S. Senate. Now, what happens is if the president says, in my authority as chief diplomat, I find that will be dysfunctional. I don't care what you appropriated. We're not sending it to Russia. And there's nothing Congress can do about that because the Constitution reserves the authority to be chief diplomat and all that entails with the president. And Congress is the legislative authority, can appropriate funds for the purpose, but they cannot force it being spent for the purpose if it intrudes on the president's authority. They can appropriate money for the Department of Defense, but because he is commander in chief, they cannot direct the policy, strategy, or tactics of the United States military. That's up to the commander in chief.
So, how does a lower court have the authority to undermine an executive order or direction of the president?
Easy enough. Marbury versus Madison. President Madison was the defendant. Marbury was the person that demanded that he get his appointment as postmaster general that was approved by the previous president on his way out. Madison said, hell no. Well, what the ruling was 222 years ago is that when it comes to matters of the Constitution, the final say shall rest with the judiciary, specifically the Supreme Court, with preliminary matters taken up by such inferior courts as Congress may create. They created circuit courts and they created district courts of appeal. So those are the inferior courts. And over that, you have the U.S. Supreme Court. And the judiciary for 222 years has had absolute authority to determine whether or not something's constitutional. They can't say we outlaw it because it's unwise, meaning the judiciary, but they can say that's unconstitutional, therefore it cannot be enforced and it is null and void. That, by the way, was what was coming down to what happened with what Smith was trying to do with what was seized from Mar-a-Lago. They said on the left side, the Democrats and Smith were claiming that the Congress passed a law that said that all of these files had to be turned over to the archivist. Well, the Supreme Court, and you can see a range of decisions, opinions on this, and the case versus the United States Department of Navy versus Egan, EGAN, 1988, where the U.S. Supreme Court said that the president has absolute discretion as commander in chief and chief diplomat to classify or declassify any document he chooses, wholly or in part, in any fashion he chooses to use. So what happens is he's simply saying, by removing them from the White House when I had the authority, I have de facto declassified them, but I'm not turning them over to the archivist because I don't know what their security clearances are. So since you intrude on my constitutional authority as president of the United States, I don't have to follow that. Screw you. And the case that decided it was Marbury versus Madison, 1803, 222 years ago. It says the president nor any other American federal agency is not bound to follow an unconstitutional law. And the same thing comes if a president behaves in an unconstitutional fashion. So when people booted this thing and enjoined ATF, which is an executive agency, from enforcing the brace ban on pistols, which was set up to deal with war vets who were injured and coming back from the sand pile, they said that was an unconstitutional usurpation of the rights of the citizens to be armed. So the president did not have that authority. That would require a constitutional amendment. So they stayed and enjoined ATF from enforcing a brace ban. So now it's back legal
So
again. So if you support the Second Amendment, you took advantage of the same kind of situation where a circuit court judge enjoined the executive branch from carrying out what was felt to be an unconstitutional rule. Now, it hasn't gotten to a district court of appeals yet, nor has it gotten back to the U.S. Supreme Court.
But Judge,
so
what? Go ahead. I'm
is it
sorry.
safe to assume that a lot of the issues with the imbalance of power and the dysfunction of the judicial is lack of Congress doing their job and shoring up actual law?
Well, it says this. Article 6 says the supreme law of the land shall be the U.S. Constitution. Such particular legislation as is necessary, I'm translating this, to carry out the Constitution, not just ordinary law, but specifically those that are necessary to carry out the Constitution. That's the second category. And the third category is treaties that have been ratified by the Senate. Now, you remember that too fast, too furious scandal that Obama came up with, where they were deliberately sending guns into Mexico to set a mess up. What they were trying to do is get a treaty between the U.S. and Mexico, which, if ratified by the Senate, would arguably become part of the supreme law of the land, which would basically emasculate the Second Amendment. That's what they were trying to do with the Too Fast, Too Furious. They were trying to get slick, and it would be new because it's never been done in American history. But just like this language that was designed to benefit freed slaves by saying anybody born where American law applies will be a citizen of the United States. Because Dred Scott said it didn't make any difference where a slave was born before he freed himself or where a Negro was born, even if he was born free, he could not be a citizen.
But Judge, so when the Supreme Court rules, like with regarding the Second Amendment, and then you have states like we're seeing right now, this legislature in Colorado is trying to pass this bill that would not allow for detachable magazines, which is clearly unconstitutional, right? You're restricting somebody's
Yeah,
Second Amendment.
exactly. They're likely to get slapped down by it.
Yeah, but I don't understand how could these states continue just to flout what's patently unconstitutional and push this forward? Don't they know that they're going to get slapped down anyway?
They don't care and they don't know, because the truth of the matter is somewhere around 7% of the elected officials in Congress, House and Senate, have actually read the Constitution. Only 25% of practicing lawyers and sitting judges have read the Constitution in the United States. And that's been consistent for the last 50 years. So people
So
don't know.
their ignorance is at our expense, right?
Yeah, they're ignorant at our expense. The other thing that they don't understand is if you studied what the Constitution was about, it is very clear that they were trying to set up a system of checks and balances. You have the government for the feds divided into three sections: the legislative branch, executive branch, and the judicial branch, which are all co equal. The legislative branch passes the laws, the executive enforces and carries them out, and the judiciary interprets them and decides whether or not somebody has exceeded, or some agency has exceeded, its constitutional authority. If the judiciary says they have and it gets past the Supreme Court that way, then the only remedy is coming up with a constitutional amendment, which is why we had the 14th Amendment. Dred Scott was still good American law when the Civil War ended. So they passed the 14th Amendment to undo what dumbass Justice uh, Taney had done when he wrote the Dred Scott decision, which is one of the primary factors that precipitated the Civil War. So the 14th Amendment was to undo that. So what Trump may be doing when he's pushing this birthright citizenship, what he may be doing is raising an issue that will result in a constitutional amendment to clarify what that's about. Was it intended to anchor illegals, or was it intended for something else? By the way, there's another aspect of it. The only reason it serves as an anchor is for our consideration of humanitarian considerations. It's not mandated by the Constitution. Technically, what ICE could do, what Trump could do, is exactly what I've done on quite a few unfortunate occasions. I have had a serious felon in front of me who's female with children, but no kin. And the crime is horrible. And there's an absolute requirement under the sentencing guidelines that that woman be sent to the penitentiary. She has no relatives, so it's unfortunate. But the Department of Human Services has to take her children and foster them. Now, if you take these children, they are technically citizens under the interpretation we have now with birthright. There's nothing that says you can't expel the parent or parents and send them back where they came from if they got here illegally. and keep the children. Now, why is that important? Well, nobody thinks of it now, but those who are my age remember when the dreaded notice came from your draft board. Greetings, you are hereby instructed by your president to report to your local draft board number so and so for a pre induction physical. And everybody wanted a 2A or something else rather than 1A because you could be drafted, you could be sent over to the Nam or Korea or the Pacific or Europe, World War II, and your sergeant can say, all right, and you're going to advance on that machine gun emplacement. And you're going to lay down fire for them. And you might die in the process of following the order. And if you disobeyed it, your sergeant could pull out his 1911 and shoot you in the back of the head for disobeying a direct order in combat. Now, you are a resource of the state, and in 18, you can be drafted and you can serve the armed services and you can be cannon fodder if necessary. We forget that. So, technically, what happens is when you take this person who just got born and you expel the illegal border crashes, he say, well, thank you very much. You left us a resource. In 18 years, they can be drafted into the U.S. Army or Marine Corps and they can serve a vital function. We'll take care of raising them. Bye bye. Go through the process of applying for citizenship. We can do that. There's no law that says you can't, at least not in the Constitution. So one thing that's going to happen is when you take these considerations into effect, some of the stuff that some of these judges are doing is going to go by the wayside, just like it has gone by the wayside over the last few years with this restriction of the Second Amendment. Why, and I haven't mentioned this yet, why do we have the Second Amendment? It's not just for self defense, it is a check and balance. You have the three branches of government, which I've been explaining, that offset each other and serve as a check and balance so no one particular branch of government becomes all powerful. You have the states that offset the federal government, and the federal government that cause the states to comply with the rules. Then you have the people, and if the people are armed, then you cannot impose a tyranny because the people can stage an asymmetric war to maintain their liberty against an oppressive government. By the way, all of these guerrilla functions and what's happened in Afghanistan and Iraq and Vietnam and Cuba, guess what? We invented it. We're the first. 1876, 1776, the United States invented guerrilla warfare and it beat the world's most powerful navy and the most dangerous professional army in the world. We beat them just like everybody else has, because we know and we forget that if you're dedicated to freedom and you're willing to stay the course, you can turn out any major military power who can't afford to stay there the length of time it takes to subdue a population that would be that thinks of it as, I regret that I have but one life to give for my country. Give me liberty or give me death. You see, when it's that way, you cannot defeat them if they're willing to make the sacrifices. And that's why we have the Second Amendment, because the people that propounded it just got through with the world's first modern revolution that established guerrilla warfare and this asymmetric war principle that we still can't deal with as the most advanced military and industrial nation on the planet. So we set up something that works, and that's why we have the Second Amendment. So within the course of human events, it becomes, as in the Declaration of Independence, which is still part of our governmental system, it becomes necessary too that the people maintain the ability to do that rather than being subjected to tyrannical oppression.
Judge, in light of what I love what you just said, I don't want to give it short shrift, but a question I had was in light of that 14th Amendment, right? In light of what you just explained, can you see any way to fix this
Yeah, it's
absent
an amendment.
absent a constitutional amendment?
No.
Yeah, but you just said Dred Scott was an interpretation, which means it could be reinterpreted.
No, Dred Scott didn't interpret the 14th Amendment. Dred Scott was why we have that provision in the 14th Amendment to undo Dred Scott, which was a Supreme Court decision written by Chief Justice Taney. It helped start the Civil War. So to undo that, which was still good precedent for the United States now that it had defeated the South and was reimposing its hegemony over all of the states, that was still good law, so they had the 14th Amendment to undo it. We
Gotcha.
have that kind of thing that happens. So what's going on is I can see some ways around the 14th Amendment thing because as chief diplomat, the president can just say, I find that implementing this statutory scheme, statutory, not constitutional scheme, or at least the execution thereof, I find that that is making diplomacy for the United States very dangerous because we are letting people in who might be terrorists, members of a foreign military that we allow to infiltrate without opposition, crazies, drug dealers, mentally ill folk, gangsters, infected people, and we aren't doing anything to protect the country. So, in order to carry out our responsibility to secure the national defense and security interest as otherwise following from that, we have to do this. There might be a way around it. But I think what he's driving at is the need to get Congress, which is now controlled by the Republican Party, House and Senate, to pass out a proposed amendment to change the 14th Amendment so it is clear that that is now an obsolete provision that no longer applies because it is not supposed to deal with putting out a welcome mat for people who commit crimes. By the way, that's not unprecedented. The Constitution itself, about a fourth to a third of it, is obsolete because it deals with setting up the government prior to the 1800s getting here. And it also ended the slave trade from overseas in 1806 and a few other things. So those provisions no longer apply. So it's not unusual.
I hope you're right. I mean, it's just that there's such a tenuous hold on the majority, right? It's like one vote in the House. I just don't see it. All we would need is like a Susan Collins or one of these other nut jobs to say, no, I'm not going to go along with this, and we wouldn't have the amendment pass. I'm more enthused by seeing a separate way of being able to do it other than getting a constitutional amendment. I just don't think we're going to be able to get it through.
Well, there's another way of setting up a constitutional amendment. It can be proposed by the states themselves or by Congress, but it'd have to be ratified by 2/3 of the states.
Mhm.
And there is one I hope they don't get to because there are too many stupid idiots like AOC, etc., in Congress. I don't want an idiot like that running amok in what they call a constitutional convention. The Constitution says that's one of the ways of coming up with an amendment, but we've never done it in 236 years.
Wow.
In other
But never
words, if
mind.
you have a constitutional convention, the whole Constitution could be theoretically rewritten or
Mhm.
uh, you could reject the whole thing. And I don't trust this bunch of ignoramuses that we've got handling our affairs today to redraft the Constitution or come up with something that is.
Oh my God. I don't think anyone does, Judge. I don't think anyone trusts these people. at all. I mean, it's just like, I mean, hey, Dana.
What at what points do you just say our government's been infiltrated by special interests and foreign agents to the point where it's a state of emergency where we can shut all this shit down and figure it out the
Homeland
right way?
Security got created after 9/11. You had some terrorists hijack some airplanes and they crashed them into the Twin Towers. You don't need that now. They can walk across the border with backpacks full of military grade explosives, detonation devices, control devices, and nobody's checking them. And we give them transportation to major industrial centers, communication centers, power and energy centers, and to commerce centers, and to massive centers of population where dirty explosives laced with radioactive material can be set off, or suitcase nukes. Does anybody have an idea what a 5 megaton warhead weighs?
5 megaton would be crazy, man. That would destroy like a mile radius range, more than that.
Oh, more than a mile. The one that they dropped on Hiroshima that wiped out several square miles was only 16,000 tons of TNT equivalent. That's 16 kilotons. That's
So, what does that mean?
that means, you know how much that warhead weighs?
No.
About 75 pounds. You can carry it in a backpack.
Oh my God,
Wait,
that's
you're saying
scary.
you
You're
could carry a
scaring me.
five
So
megaton
so
device in
You're
a backpack?
scaring me.
Yeah.
yes. Well, that's my question. At what point do you say that the risk has gotten too great? Not that I'm a fan of martial law, but is there any emergency powers that the president can say, look, we've been infiltrated in all
Yeah.
systems of government?
Here's what
And
happens. You remember when they were talking about January 6th and the Democrats kept talking about insurrection?
Oh, don't remind me.
Okay,
who,
let me
who
tell
can
you
forget?
why they kept doing that. All of the rights apply except in two instances. One is foreign invasion, War of 1812 is an example. Two,
Mhm.
when there's an insurrection. We had one, it was known as the Civil War. They kept using insurrection. Now, what happens is this thing with invasion. Technically, when you illegally cross the border, particularly when it's in mass, it is an invasion.
Uh-huh.
The aspect that would support Trump, and I've never heard anybody bring this up, is you could consider this invasion of these illegals coming across our border in mass to suspend application of the Constitution. So the 14th Amendment, with its thing about if you were born where American law applies, you are a citizen, that is suspended because you have an invasion.
I see.
So that would get Trump around it if they are smart enough to press that issue, but nobody asked me.
And it's crazy because, working in South Texas, like for aviation and these guys, military, they're going over. And it got so unsafe when Biden took over because he said, don't come to the border. Don't come to the border. He was telling everyone, reporters, don't come to the border. Here they're trafficking children across the fucking border, and we can't find those children today. All that transpired during that time period. But then they were going through Donna, Texas. I mean, it's horrible. When you see it in your eyes, how corrupt this government is, it makes you really fucking sick. You know?
Well, that was kind of my point too about the executive powers and what Judge just described. If my dumbass can figure out to suspend constitutional powers to gut this government,
Hmm.
I don't understand why we haven't done it yet. Not that I'm a big fan of it because precedents could be ugly, but
I think
you
they
know,
all are getting paid off. That's why. I think
Well, I know.
every fucking person here is getting paid off, including some Republicans. You know, I just think it's a bunch of bullshit. And I'm so glad Elon Musk is on their ass about it, because that's why you got Senator Warren raising hell like she's like, we all know you're guilty, bitch. Sit down. I mean, I'm tired of seeing her. You know, and that's what I wanted to say, Dana. Remember when you said about Chelsea, about how she got on social media saying, "Quit talking bad about my mama," and and the Clinton Foundation. You remember? Is she there, or did she wander off?
Dana,
I think she wandered off.
No, I'm still here. I'm
Oh,
moving around in the house. What's up?
oh, I was just saying. Do you remember? I'm sorry, I don't want to switch. But I just remember a long time ago, I forgot what I was going to ask and everything. So I wanted to tell you before I forgot again. But
Okay.
okay. Anyway, do you remember when Chelsea got on social media and saying, oh, she started fucking whining like a rich bitch elite, you know? Oh, don't pick on my peers and family, you know? Yada, yada, yada. You know, I was so appalled about getting that task. And I said, well, can you please explain about the 15 million sent from USAID for your wedding? You know, still waiting for a fucking reply. You know, I mean, they're so corrupt. It makes you sick. And that's why all these people, and that's why I was just going to say too, that for Judge Brown, I mean, how can these stupid ass uh judges uh you know put a stop on this shit? It's just common sense.
let me say something. I got the opportunity to review the downloads of the 300 Biden laptops. The press has lied to you. It's not one, it's three. And I interviewed the technician. There is some truly frightful stuff on there. And I'm not going to spill the beans on it, but somebody needs to get in it. And there is ample probable cause to indict Hunter Biden, or was until he got the blanket pardon, but also Barack Obama and Biden himself for aiding and abetting Hunter's failure to register as a foreign agent for China. There are White House tapes that this crackhead actually has on his laptop, on one of the laptops, several, all three of them actually. And they're not just tapes like during the Nixon era where they are audio, they include the visual. And what is being revealed that Biden, Obama, and some foreign representatives are talking about would be flat out treason if there was a declared or an active shoot 'em up with somebody else. The Constitution defines only one crime, and that is treason, and it sets forth the evidence that would be necessary, the
I
number
totally
of
agree.
witnesses, and what I saw would indicate treason, but for the fact
Absolutely.
that it was with somebody that was being negotiated with, so it could not be treasonous.
Oh, it's
Now,
just sickening. It's sickening.
I would refer to something that is really revolting. Remember the Asian guy that I forget his name, who was the special prosecutor, who said there is probable cause to indict Joe
Oh
Biden,
yeah, but
but
they
he's
wouldn't do it because he was kind of senile.
yeah. Now
But he is in charge of the red button.
let me tell you what is in those tapes. There is ample discussion between Hunter and his daddy about the black box behind the vet in the family garage. Did your people get a chance to look in the box? Were they satisfied? There'll be more coming up. In other
Yeah.
words, the vice president, unlike the president, has absolutely no authority to classify or declassify documents. The president does, but Biden was not president at the time, and he was putting stuff in the black box for Hunter Biden's foreign clients to take a look at. One of the most disgusting things in there is a discussion where Obama, both Bidens, and a Chinese representative were discussing $10 million per person as a bribe so that the United States executive branch, the commander in chief, meaning Barack Obama, would call off the Navy from its aggressive counter patrols against the Chinese Navy in the South China Sea so they could peacefully build these little concrete placements on semi-submerged coral atolls so they could claim a 200-mile territorial radius around each and control all of the South China Sea, which would embrace the coastlines of Korea,
Oh, that's
Vietnam,
horrible. That's
and
fucking
Western
horrible.
Japan, and
Oh,
also the Philippines.
His name was Robert Hur, if you care. Was
Well,
who?
the
yeah, that's the guy you're talking about.
Who?
Her, he's the one, the special prosecutor, that declined to prosecute Biden for removing
Oh
the
gosh, I can't
documents.
keep up with everyone, you know? There's so many bad people out there,
But
you know?
specifically, let me cut you off before I forget
No,
this
go
thing.
ahead, sweetie. Oh, go ahead.
What happens is Barack Obama in the video is leaning up against the front of his desk in the Oval Office. Sitting immediately in front of him is Hunter Biden, and next to him is his daddy, Joe Biden. Standing up is this tall Chinese guy. And Obama is saying, let me get this straight. I get 10, Joe gets 10, and Hunter gets 10. And the Chinese guy said, that's right. I have deposited $100 million in cash with this entity that Hunter is working with, and you each get 10 million cash a piece out of this. Now, I don't know why nobody wants to go deal with that and suppress it and claim that it's a fraud. That's why they're lying about it.
but Trump has to have that.
He may. What happened is the guy got permission and he showed us the releases from Hunter Biden to download the stuff. And when he did, he was shocked. His daddy had worked in military intelligence. He told his dad he was instructed to go deal with the FBI. The FBI was not interested. He got Cuomo to get interested. Cuomo started publishing it, and then the FBI shows up at his place unannounced 6 a.m. in the morning to seize everything. So they seized the laptops, but they didn't seize the downloads. So Fox was having a special moot court. This has been about 3 years ago, and it was done in New Jersey, where they had a very experienced prosecutor who had been with the Manhattan DA's office and was then a defense lawyer of some quality, and another one who was in the same circumstance being the defense lawyer for this moot thing. The actual technician was there and sworn, and we had a jury that was pretty representative of the people, and they were acting as a grand jury to determine if there was probable cause to believe that there was probable cause that Hunter Biden had violated the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Now, he got a blanket pardon, so I guess he can't be held answerable. But there's one interesting thing about him and every one of these people on the January 6th committee, they got pardoned. I've
That's
never,
bullshit.
no, hold on,
I
hold
am
on, hold on,
so
hold on, hold
angry
on, hold
about
on,
that
hold on. Don't get
pardon.
angry.
Oh, I'm
Grin.
not angry.
Yeah,
I'm
let me
just
tell you why
voicing
you
it.
should grin about it.
But they got
Okay.
Fools.
pardoned by an incompetent president.
No,
No,
they lose their Fifth Amendment protection.
that's it.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
Oh yeah, I
the
forgot.
Constitution,
Thank you.
listen, the Constitution specifically says that anything done on the floor of the House or the Senate is immune to consequence. So, what did Biden pardon them for? So if they got a blanket pardon for something
Mhm.
behind the scenes, they can be called as witnesses for grand juries, for trials, for
Mhm.
hearings, and they
Mhm.
cannot claim Fifth Amendment immunity from being compelled to testify because they have no jeopardy for any crime that come out of their testimony. So they can
Wow.
be compelled to testify on pain of being locked up for contempt or
I
being
never looked at
held
it that
as a
way.
material witness in prison or in jail until they
Wow.
give testimony or be required to post a material witness bond. So now they can be compelled to testify against relatives, friends, colleagues,
Okay.
and associates.
Oh, Judge, correct
Wow.
correct me
Didn't
if
know
I'm
that.
correct me if I'm wrong, but if you accept an immunity deal, isn't that technically an admission of guilt and why you lose your Fifth Amendment right?
No, it's not why you lose your Fifth Amendment right. The
No
president,
one
for a
uses my
number of
Fifth
sound
Amendment
reasons,
rights.
has absolute pardon authority. What they anticipated was that some state might have a U.S. attorney who decided to vindictively go after somebody. They never conceived of anybody going after the likes of George Washington or Thomas Jefferson or Madison, you see, or Adams. But
These
now we
people
find
are horrible.
they
They're
went
just
after
horrible.
President Trump. But you
They're
see, the
horrible.
president had absolute pardon power, so he could prevent that from happening. In other words, I don't care what you did, he's pardoned. That's the end of it. You see, Lincoln did that. Uh, Truman did that at the end of World War II. And one of the things that came in was what happens to these people who are American citizens but of Japanese extraction, and they went back to visit a grandparent in the old country. And they came because, oh, guess what it was? It was winter break for college students. So they went
Sounds
over there to see them.
confusing.
And then we had December 6, 1941, Pearl Harbor. And the Japanese said, no, no, you're not going back to the United States. We're drafting you into the Japanese Navy or Army, and you're going to be a translator or an interrogator. We don't care what you're going to do, or we'll shoot you.
How horrible.
So when they got back after World War II, they got tried or they got charged with treason.
Oh my God, that sounds horrible.
I know it is. So you had needed the presidential pardon to say, hey, these guys, it wasn't their fault. And there's a
Did they
whole lot,
get
a lot, there was a whole lot of stuff going on about what's dual citizenship, what's treason, were they responsible?
oh my
They
God.
were born here, so does that make them automatic citizens, even if their parents hadn't fully acquired citizenship? See, there's another thing. Dana and I interviewed somebody 2 weeks ago on X Space. His citizenship had been pending for 41 years. He's very
What?
much
How
a,
can that be?
well,
41 years.
so he's very much against the illegals. Hell, he had to wait in line, so they didn't. So why should they get brought in? So the bottom line is what happens since he's been here 41 years, he's got grandkids. So
Exactly.
do they become citizens because they were born here or in there or are they
Well,
in
they
some kind
should
of
be.
limbo?
They should be
Yeah, well
be-
see there are nuances to this whole thing.
because of what this guy's been through. He tried to do it the right way.
Yeah.
Okay? And look at what happened. It wasn't his fault. And if he's a good citizen and contributes to society, that's great.
Well
It
see,
takes a long time to get in here, and I can understand living in South Texas.
well, let me
Okay.
tell you what the thing is. See, as
Uh-huh.
chief diplomat, the president can declare that the entire bunch of these illegals, they are political refugees and entitled to political asylum. There's an interesting thing about the asylum. The president had the authority to backdate their point of entry. Let's say they said it at if Kamala the hyena queen, had
I
gotten
can't
elected.
stand that bee.
Well, if she, let's suppose, and she had gotten elected, she
He's an
could
idiot.
theoretically say, I am granting them refugee status and asylum effective
Mm-hmm.
January 2021. That's when I
Mm-hmm.
was sworn in as vice president. So we
Okay.
will extend it back there. Now, guess what? If you get granted political asylum, you automatically become a citizen within 5 years and you can vote anywhere in the country
That's
because you're
crazy.
now a citizen.
But
So
it
you
should be
notice,
5 years,
wait a
shouldn't
minute,
it?
you remember where all of the illegals are getting shipped into these swing states. So
Oh,
when the midterms come up in 2026, they would be fully qualified as citizens and eligible to vote.
I
see,
have no
you're
doubt that she
right.
would have
Oh
did
my
that too.
God.
She
And
definitely
wait a
Oh
would have
my
minute.
did that.
God.
There-
Oh, they're so dirty.
And wait a
That's
minute.
how these Democrats are.
You want to get a perspective? We've let in 50 million plus illegals. Now, you want to get a
I know
perspective
it.
on that? How
It's
many?
crazy.
No, no, you want
It's
to, no, wait a
crazy.
minute. You want to get a perspective on that?
Absolutely. Yes.
How many people do you think lived in Nazi Germany during World War II?
I don't know. I'm not good
About
in
the
history, baby.
same amount. Between 50 and 60 million Germans lived in Nazi Germany in World War II.
Oh,
Another 30 million in Austria. So, in other words, we let in
insane.
the equivalent of
Oh,
Germany during World War II into our country.
That's insane.
yeah. And it is insane. And I don't get it. And what they did too, they allowed for the child trafficking along the way. They told those reporters, that Biden administration told those reporters when he got on there, don't come to the border because they're fucking trafficking kids at that time. And those stupid reporters listen, duh, except for a few.
Judge, I have a Second Amendment question. Um, I was reading up on this. I have a bunch of friends who are in this situation. A felon cannot get their federal gun rights restored. So a felon can never possess a firearm, but for getting a pardon from the president. Is that correct?
Right now, yeah.
Okay. And
But that can be changed by legislation because it's not in the Constitution.
yeah, I don't understand that. Like you have none of the other 10 amendments to the Constitution or the Bill of Rights do you lose indefinitely other than the right to vote in like one or two states currently. So if you've served your time and paid your debt to society, why should not all of your Bill of Rights that you have be restored to you once you've served your time?
Good question. What in the Constitution says one amendment to the Constitution is less enforceable than another?
Nothing.
Right. I don't understand this. I was reading up on it, and
In other words, it is a construct of some people who had an interest in making sure that nobody could go back and set up a situation where the people acted as a deterrent to government oppression. Now, if I can give you a very brief history lesson on how this started, it came from English law. There was a long standing rule that enabled England to master all of the rest of the European powers on the continent before the Renaissance. And that was because they had Robin Hood longbow archers. So, by royal edict, it was mandatory that yeomen, that is, free men who had a certain wealth status, they weren't nobility, but they were free commoners, had an obligation to practice so many hours a week at archery at 100 yards, okay, and maintain a certain proficiency. The English longbowmen completely obsoleted, for the most part, the medieval knight. They slaughtered them at Cressy, Agincourt, and Poitiers, and it was just irresistible. So they had an obligation to possess an adequate bow, strings, and arrows, and to be very proficient with them. Under English law, if you had an obligation to do something, you had a right to the thing. So if you had an obligation to possess a bow and arrows and be proficient, you had a right to possess the bow and arrow and be proficient. Now, just after the medieval period ends and the Renaissance is starting, this is in the early 16th century, in the 1500s, somebody decides they want to set up these colonies in North America. Well, when the people came over here, the original colonists, they had an obligation under English law to be proficient with the weaponry necessary to protect themselves. So that became an obligation. You were part of the militia. The militia is defined as all able bodied males between 15 and 60 who are capable of bearing arms. So you had an obligation under English law when you were a colonist to be proficient in arms and to bear arms, because remember, there are some people that don't like you being here, the Native Americans, and they want to take your scalp. So that became a right. And this is 1789 when the Constitution is ratified, and the Bill of Rights is ratified in 1791. And in 1791, the United States consisted of a temperate zone jungle full of a lot of trees, forest, quicksand, swamp in certain places toward the south, and a lot of people that would take your life in a minute. So there was an obligation for the people to be armed, and they therefore had a commensurate right to be armed. And guess what? Police had not been invented. Police would not be invented until the 1830s in England. We call it Scotland Yard. And the person that set it up was a guy named Sir Robert Peel, a part of the English aristocracy. And to this day, they call English cops what? Peelers, after Peel, by Robert Peel. And what's the short thing for Robert? Bobby. And they
Yeah, I
call him
thought they were
Bobby.
bobbies. Yeah.
So English bobbies came into effect into the 1830s, and then Boston and New York decided to emulate them in the late 1830s, early 1840s, and those were the first police. So for the first 50 some years of the country's existence, there were no such things as police because they hadn't been invented. So how do you think there was law enforcement? That was up to the posse. The only law enforcement official was the sheriff, a constitutional officer in every single state who was authorized to deputize people to assist him in enforcing the law. So when you set this up, a well regulated militia just simply means, in English terms, and the way the Americans used it 200 years ago, the militia is a term of art like the body politic, which means all people who are citizens and can vote in an election are called body politic. So all people 15 to 60 who are physically capable of bearing arms are known as the militia, and the militia needed to be well regulated and trained because everybody was part of it. Everybody was part of it except the slaves and the indentured servants. So, what wound up happening is they had an obligation to be proficient with arms, to keep law and order, to keep the Native Americans from slaughtering somebody. So, they had a right to be armed. So, they guaranteed that. And they also understood that they did not want another tyranny. So, they said, sovereignty resting with the people collectively, then the people collectively can be an offset to the formal government. And that's how we get where we are. That's a little history on the Second Amendment.
Amen.
And so, but so you're the point of it is that without a presidential pardon, there is no way. I mean, I'm looking at this right now. I looked it up. It said that
Oh, I didn't know it's on there.
Congress did make a statute, 18 USC 925C, that you could apply to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to restore your gun rights. And if your application is denied, then you could seek judicial review. But since 1992, Congress barred ATF from spending money to review and investigate a felon's application to restore gun rights. Then later, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that no action, quote unquote, does not equal a quote unquote denial. In other words, no denial equals no right to go to federal court.
Yeah, that's what they've done under the previous Supreme Court setup. And that's what they did because they're trying to deal with gun control. Let me tell you about some of the felonies. Every year, IRS hires temporary employees when they get the tax returns coming in. And by the way, they're talking about Musk and Doge getting access to Treasury records. Well, that's not who you have to worry about. You have to worry about the small private banks that accept contracts from the Treasury Department to receive taxes and disperse tax refunds. They have all of your information and absolutely no control over what happens with them. And there are temps who work seasonally to help prepare the forms who also have access to your records. But here is the thing, most states have what they call unemployment compensation. So if you're unemployed for a period that, in other words, if you don't work 40 hours a week in most states, you're entitled to unemployment compensation, right? And since the feds provide money, a lot of that brings it under federal jurisdiction because their federal money's involved. So they've got these people who are temps who might work 15 hours a week, and that means that they're still 25 hours short of 40 hours a week, so they can apply to their state for unemployment compensation. Okay, fine, they get it. But let's supposing that there's a slight misreport. So somebody gets paid for 1/2 hour worth of unemployment insurance, 1/2 hour over the course of 6 weeks that they aren't entitled to. Well, what happens is in the federal system, and I used to volunteer to represent people, you'd walk over there, and they got 187 poor saps who are broke, who got 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours unemployment compensation that the feds thought they weren't entitled to. So they'd work these deals out with them to plead guilty, and they would decline to prosecute, but now they have a felony conviction. Is that the kind of person who, through inadvertence, should be deprived of his constitutional rights? No, it is not. But you see, because of these gun control freaks who are scared of their shadows, and do not have the understanding that there are some sacrifices that have to be made if you want to maintain liberty and freedom. They made it so these people can't get their rights back. Now, one last point, and then I'll pass the mic again. How many of us think that driving on a freeway or a highway is an important thing? You can get there quickly. But when you deal with that, there's collateral consequences. You could quickly lose it, or somebody else could quickly lose it, and somebody winds up mutilated or dead.
Absolutely.
And that is collateral damage. But because of the convenience of operating a motor vehicle at 55, 65, 70 miles an hour on a highway, we risk the collateral damage.
Absolutely,
But
baby. I agree.
but you see, when you have rights as a citizen and you're trying to get liberty and maintain it, there are collateral consequences like Second Amendment stuff. just like you can get killed, and more people, many more people get killed every year in automobile mishaps than they do with gun mishaps. But we're not going to cut out the convenience of automotive transportation for absolute safety. Just like we need liberty, and in order to be subject to guaranteeing our own liberty, we have to be able to be armed to offset or would be tyrannical government, which we can see with these left wing idiots who are trying to play Nazi on us. We can see
Absolutely.
that. So there are collateral
Absolutely.
consequences that are unavoidable. And we just have
Absolutely.
to accept those risks if we want to stay free.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
mean, I'm looking at something right now. It's a Sixth Amendment blog. It came
Absolutely.
out in August of last year, and it's saying now that in light of the Bruin decision, the Sixth Circuit is now reviewing whether people should get their Second Amendment rights back based upon a dangerousness test.
Yeah, I
Basically
see.
saying
That's
that if
right.
someone is not considered dangerous, then they shouldn't lose their ability to have a firearm if they do have a felony conviction. So I guess it'll be interesting. I'll send it to you to Judge so you can take a look at it.
I know two of the justices on the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. I was mentor for one of them and trained them in the criminal law. The person was a pretty damn good defense lawyer, and then became a pretty damn good small claims court judge, and wound up progressing up and made a damn good district court judge, and has written some very good opinions as a circuit court of appeals judge, and I think should have been nominated for U.S. Supreme Court instead of that Tanja idiot who kept scratching her head and didn't know what the devil a woman was.
That is so funny. I totally agree. She looked like a fucking idiot. But let me ask you one thing before I go, and I know you're going to have to go. Do you, what are you doing now? I mean, with all your expertise and everything since you left TV?
What am I doing?
Yes.
I'm writing. You can read some of my posts on X. They shadow block me to the devil, but I'm trying to spread the word. You know, somebody tells a lie long enough and they can get anybody, including the liar, to believe it. Well, the truth offsets the lie. So I'm trying to post the truth and maybe get to the 10% who want to spread it to others. But, you know, what do I have? 120,
Oh,
50
that's
some thousand
that's
followers.
fucking great. I love it. And I will definitely I started following you after, being on here tonight, but absolutely. And it's just like it's so fucking crazy nowadays. I mean,
Let's
living
ease
in
off on the
South
F
Texas.
word because we are streaming on YouTube.
Oh, fuck you too. That's how I feel about them. I'm
Well,
sorry.
they what they do is they knock us off when they F bomb.
Okay, okay, I'm
And by the
sorry.
way,
I'm
one
sorry
point
for
with them too.
saying the FUCK word. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
one thing about them. I remember the case where the cake maker, just one guy up in Denver, Colorado, wound up in front of the Supreme Court because he said his religion forbade him to make a wedding cake for a certain kind of couple.
Oh yeah, a gay couple.
Okay, remember the woman that just did an online thing setting up invitations and stuff for everybody, but she said ethically she couldn't do it for a gay couple.
No, I didn't hear about that
Well, a
one.
woman too. They both wound up in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. That's just one person. Now,
Okay.
Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
YouTube, how many hundreds of millions of people do they service, and how much do they impact interstate communications? They're subject to the U.S. Supreme Court, and when they impact interstate communications or commerce, which both do, then what winds up happening is all of those civil rights, which are embraced by the Bill of Rights,
Mm-hmm.
including the First Amendment freedom of speech, apply to them, and they cannot selectively restrict speech because they don't like it. They
Oh
don't
my
have
God.
that option. But
That's confusing.
they
Jeez.
They don't have that option, but everybody says they're private, they can do what they want. No, they can't, because they impact interstate commerce and communications. Once they do that, they get stuck with recognizing and respecting everybody's rights under the Constitution, particularly the Bill of Rights, particularly the one amendment that is deemed most important, Amendment number 1, free speech.
I fucking hate YouTube, you know? I do. I'm sorry. I hate them because of what they suppress from the American doctors about this fucking COVID bullshit at
All right,
times.
F bomb, F bomb.
I'm
Watch
sorry, but
They
it's the
they
truth.
just told she
I'm
just told you
sorry.
not to say it because it's going to kick them off the stream of YouTube, and you did it. You're doing it. It's
well,
hilarious.
let me give you one. I have never posted anything in my life on Facebook, but I had a maximum number of, what do they call it, friends, and I only had the account so I could, people would say, check this out, and it'll be on Facebook. I just go there. Do you know they banned me for life because they did not like what I post on X?
Wait,
You mean
YouTube banned
Facebook?
That sounds like
Facebook
Facebook?
sounds
banned
like
me
Facebook.
for life because they sent me, when I protested this, they didn't like what I post on X.
But you're not using their platform. How
I
could they
know
ban
that,
you?
but that's what you call interference with free speech. And no,
And that's
That's insane.
why I hate YouTube. I'm sorry. I hate YouTube for that reason.
that was,
I'm gonna say we all got that memo.
I don't care. I mean, that's fine. I'm just saying, you don't have to believe what I have to believe, but that's fine. I don't, condemn you
Judge,
for it.
Judge,
I, I got.
I just DM'd you the Sixth Circuit appellate blog, and it has the case I'm talking about this Second Amendment permits the disarming of dangerous felons. Maybe you know. I'm sure you probably know the two
Who is
judges
talking?
who ruled on it. It's pretty cool.
but can you,
Hey, I got.
to the judge,
Oh,
you talking about,
Say it again.
did you have the names of the judges? You
Yeah, it's Judge Thapar and Judge Davis.
I know who they are. I'm not personally acquainted with them, but one of my favorite justices that I trained is on the Sixth Circuit. Like I said, by the way, the Second Circuit had Roger E. Clifton, who was an outstanding female jurist, and she should have been nominated for Supreme Court instead of that Tanjay uh, Jackson from the Second Circuit. Also, there's another fine young lady who is a justice. Matter of fact, her mama handled my last divorce. And I know she's an excellent jurist. She could have made a fine U.S. Supreme Court justice, but they picked that shill for the transsexual community. That was the signal she was giving when she said she didn't know what a woman was.
Well, that's all right. Trump's going to get 2 more picks, I think.
Yeah,
So we'll be good.
All right, so are we good
so
for
I
the
got
night?
some. I got some homework assignments. Maybe y'all can help me out because it's eating me up. So, not a big conspiracy theorist, but I do listen and kind of try to follow things down. So, somebody had claimed with Trump's executive order in 2018 that essentially, basically, Joe Biden wasn't a legitimate president. So, uh, down the road, somebody also explained that there's no record of Joe Biden's any of his executive orders or him being anything other than a vice president in the archives. And I can't find any. He's the only president that's not listed in the U.S. archives. And I'm wondering if somebody can find out any record of Joe Biden's presidency, official record. And I'm curious as to why that, as far as the state of or the United States is concerned, he has no record of being a president.
well,
It's very.
that would be easy enough. They would call it a nunc pro tunc, NUNC, separate word, PRO, separate word, TUNC, correction of the record to clear up that error. He took the oath and he's been functioning in that capacity and signing off on the orders. So that's all that's necessary if the formalities have been observed. So you can't create a time machine and go back and remove him before he carries the stuff out. So the acts become official. It's like, well, I dealt with
I've
a
just,
lot.
I've just never seen that before because
Well,
usually it goes into record.
let me say how it happens. Where that issue comes up comes into, is this couple married or not? A lot of these preachers that get called, they're not really ordained and they aren't official preachers, nor are they justices of the peace or judges or mayors or things like that. And they perform marriage ceremonies. So at a later time, somebody wants to attack the validity of the marriage, saying the person who was supposed to be the ordained minister that performed the ceremony was not, in fact, a minister. Everybody agrees that when they check, he's not, but he performed the ceremony and people relied upon it. So it's going to be treated like it was legit. So the general
Uh,
rule is if somebody occupies the office and has engaged in the actions that have had impact, then those actions are official and they can't be undone by a later technicality.
Is that like common law marriage?
Not quite, but it is part of the common law. By the way, the very first case of heard by the United States Supreme Court way back in the 1790s was concerning the Sixth Amendment. It says, no matter tried before a jury upon the common law shall be heard upon appeal except upon application of the common law. The question is, what is the common law? The United States Supreme Court ruled, I think it was 1792, and yeah, it's case number one. And they said, we adopt the ruling of the English House of Lords declared in 1661 as to what the common law is. First, we would hold that all law in the United States is common law until superseded by statutory law. They put regulation, ordinance, or whatever. They elaborated on what the law was. All law is common law until it is superseded by legislative action. Here is the definition of common law, and it's quite enlightening because it's not in line with what gets recited. It's a direct quote from the case. It says, we hold that the common law is that body of judge made law based on tradition, precedent, and the evolving conditions of society. Unquote. Further quote, all law in the United States is the common law, and that means it is judge made law until it is superseded by legislative action. Unquote. So, in other
Right.
words, all law is made by judges. And I can give you an example. Most people don't realize this. Okay, what is reasonable doubt? Everybody's heard it, but juries need guidance. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will be the judges of the facts and of the application of the law. You will do this under the direction of the court, and the court is the proper source from which you will get the law. Now, I charge the jury, ladies and gentlemen, you must find the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. What does that mean? So I read an instruction as to what reasonable doubt is. Now, I didn't like what it was back in 1991, so I wrote my own instruction. The losing side took it up and appealed to the Supreme Court of Tennessee. It got up there, and they say Judge Brown of 30th Judicial District, etc., he declined to use the standard pattern instruction on what reasonable doubt was. However, on review of what he did charge the jury, we find that it is a better instruction than the pattern instruction. Therefore, we now adopt it as the pattern jury instruction on reasonable doubt for the state of Tennessee. So for the
Wow.
next 20 some years, my instruction, which is common law, it's not set forth in any code book. I wrote it,
It's judge made, so it is
judge
common law, like
made.
you just
Now,
explained. Yep.
and then the
Can we
other
start
thing is,
winding it down? Because I'm getting tired.
okay, well, we hold on. This is important. This is understanding American law. The other thing is what, in fact, is how do you assess an eyewitness identification? I wrote the instruction for that one too. Circumstantial evidence. I wrote that for Tennessee too. So at least three laws that got explained to the jury in damn near any criminal case, I wrote. That's common law. Nobody.
Now, how do you feel? How do you feel about jury nullification?
Oh
I
well,
give it.
that's important.
It's like people gonna keep asking questions, and
I'm
I need
sorry,
Well,
Dana.
hold on.
to
Well, let
I'll
me
I
save it
need
for
explain
to
next
this.
Tuesday.
wind it down.
Let
Like
me explain
I'm
this so
Well,
that
sorry.
I'm
we
just
can
gonna
go.
say thank you all for letting me ask my questions. Thank you, Judge.
Well,
Appreciate
I'm
you as
going to
always.
explain your last question. Jury nullification is important. In law, it's known as the 13th juror rule. A judge can listen to the case, and if he totally disagrees with what the jury did in terms of justice, not he can't convict anybody, but if he is very dissatisfied with the jury's verdict of guilty, he can nullify the whole thing by acting as a 13th juror, and the effect is though you had a hung jury. So there's a new trial. Why is that the case? I always allowed the prosecution and the defense to confer with the jurors if the jurors chose to confer after they returned the verdict. Well, I had one bunch and they came back with this. Oh, I even asked, you didn't think there was reasonable doubt? The prosecution was shaking its head. It thought it had reasonable doubt in this case. The jury foreman said, oh, yeah, there was plenty of reasonable doubt, but we just thought that was a mere technicality, and smart defense lawyers kept us from finding out why the police arrested the guy. So we figured since he got arrested, he must have done it.
That's crazy.
Of course.
That's
Now, the truth of the
that's
matter is, out of
fucked
every
up.
five juries, three of them exercise wisdom, and they're pretty good. One of them, a bunch of ignorant mules that you were surprised got out of second grade. And then one out of the five, you can't tell what the devil they're going to do.
all right. We'll just resume it next week Tuesday. The topic could just be focused more on the law. So everyone should just have their legal questions to ask the judge.
I love it. It's a great space. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you. The professor has concluded the lecture for this evening.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
thank you.
Thanks to all the speakers. I really appreciate it. It's great speakers tonight. And everybody listening on YouTube. Thank you guys for hanging out. And everybody listening here in the X space. So appreciate you guys
I
as
would
well.
concur strongly in that opinion, my dear Miss Dana, of course.
Good night. God bless y'all.
All right. Have a good
Okay.
night. Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Thank you for your comments and insight, Judge, and Dana. Thanks for hosting. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'm out of here. How about